Hi, I'm Othais, and this is Rob. He has a mustache and a YouTube channel known as BritishMuzzleLoaders. Now, we've worked with Rob before, and actually you now visit us twice in the span of a month.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of exciting content coming from Rob in the future on his channel because we frankly managed to pull a number of articles that he does not have access to in order for him to do a by-the-book drill on a number of interesting... it's all British military, right?
Yes.
It's all British military. But we went and built all sorts of like fixtures and things so that we could do it just right. And that's all coming at British Muzzleloaders. So make sure you check out that channel. There'll obviously be a link here. It's not going to be available by the time this drops, though. Like, what do we think, in February?
Yeah, it'll be the new year for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what are we doing in the meantime? Well, because I've been doing all this with Rob, we lost a little time on the episode production, so we're going to do a Q&A between our two channels. A lot of people are excited to see us together anyway, so this works out very well. And I think between the two of us, we can put out a lot of good information, or at least entertaining information, to fill up a little bit of this time gap. And then... this is going to free up enough time for me to actually get to work on some of the new episodes for C&Rsenal. Very excited about what we have coming for the new year. And if you are a patron, make sure you're tuning into our patrons-only podcast because I'm actually spelling out a little bit more of where our changes need to be and what I think our vulnerabilities are. So give that a look. In the meantime, because this is a replacing episode, I do need to tell you that C&Rsenal is brought to you in part by Ballistol, which is so fun to say.
Ballistol.
Yeah, no, not just Ballistol, but saying that we're brought to you in part by. Because we actually have resisted sponsors. I get messages every week. I don't know, do you get this? The guys that are like, would you sell cell phone games and stuff like that? Like,
Yes.
yes. It's constant spam. And half of the... what do they say for your channel? Because for us, it's like, Dear C&Rsenal team.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Do they even spell it correctly? Hi, I'm here. I'm just off camera.
Oh, yeah, May's here, by the way. May's mic'd, but not on camera. Because we don't have a lot of room. Yeah, what did they do? Did they just say British Muzzleloaders?
It's quite obviously a form letter with the channel name inserted.
Oh, my God. Yeah, ours are awful. But anyway, we always get spammed by this stuff for, who would want to advertise with us. And we've actually been approached a couple of times by people that are legitimately, they know who Othais and May are. But they have products that I don't use. I'm not really gonna use, especially like the cell phone game stuff. Like a lot of those are like, those are traps. Those are almost gambling traps. A lot of them. So I don't really tend to push that product. Ballistol, however, which I'm about to throw on the ground, they reached out. Not even reached out to us. We ran into one of their representatives at an event and started talking. And they said, "Oh, you're open to working with us? We'd love to." Because it actually is kind of a win-win for them. Mm-hmm. They literally are a product designed to preserve historic firearms. We're a show that preserves the history of firearms. It's a great gimmick there. Like, it's preservation across the board. So if you get a chance, try out Ballistol. It's a universal army oil, is what it was developed as originally a long time ago, I believe 1905. It's been in use for a very long time. It's proven to be extremely safe for your firearms and their preservation. There are some limitations there. Do not just don't fill a bathtub full of Ballistol and just submerge your nickel-plated Colt in there for 6 months and then get upset that something happened. You're not supposed to do that with that gun for any product. That's different. We'll talk more about those details later. But at the front, if you're just wiping, oiling, and cleaning them up, let's go with Ballistol. All right, so sponsorship aside, by the way, people are really positive about that.
The Ballistol.
I've had zero complaints. I do anything on the show and I get complaints. No one has complained.
It's true. Your shirt's unbuttoned right now. Do you know how many people are going to say you're flashing them?
There's always a complaint. These guys don't complain about anything. No one has complained about Ballistol, which means somebody else
color
is
today.
already like everybody else is apparently enjoying it. No one has complained to me about it. So
that's been kind of nice. Yeah.
All right.
Apparently it's loved.
Yeah. So actual content, because we took in questions from Patreon.
Yes.
And
Utreon and Subscribestar, because there's still have a few people left over there.
Okay.
So do you want me to go ahead and get started? Give you guys your questions?
Yeah, these are all just sort of members' questions, right?
Yes, exactly. All patron questions. All right. First question on the docket. What got you started in YouTube? Now, this one might have just been posed to Rob, but I frankly thought this was a question that the two of you might enjoy answering.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, Rob, first, you're the guest.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, thank you.
How'd you end up on YouTube?
Bit of an accident, really.
Yeah.
You tripped and fell and landed on YouTube.
And
That's usually what happens, yeah.
And there was a cat involved, I think.
Were your pants on or off?
Shh.
Okay.
That's on the
Did you have the mustache to start?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, most definitely. It was because, generally speaking, I wasn't able to find the information that I was looking for on YouTube, which happened to be information related to an Enfield paper cartridge.
Oh, just making one?
Making them, yeah, and just generally how they got
That's
together.
illegal.
Maybe in some parts of North America. So that turned into if I can't find what I'm looking for, maybe I have to make it myself.
Right.
And that turned into, if anybody's been around my channel for a little while and gone way back and reversed the search engine,
right.
You'll see those first videos, which are horribly clunky with analog sound in the background.
Lovely.
And me fumbling through.
Yeah, but somebody learned how to make their paper cartridge.
My version of a repeatable and sustainable version of the Enfield paper cartridge. And that's the first videos I put up.
That's nice.
And then I realized the first one wasn't perhaps as good as I wanted to, so I did another one that was only marginally better. with the exact same content.
Did you point the desk lamp at it?
You could see it moving in the background.
Yeah.
Yes, very rudimentary, and I think it was filmed. I had taped a camera above a workbench, and so all my hands were, from above kind of thing, rolling, and me talking into the camera.
Hey, that's better than a lot of guys. Normally, it's just like they get the daughter-in-law or whatever, like film it, and they're not even in focus, and they're pointing in random directions because they're bored.
So that basically was the genesis of the reason of getting on YouTube, and then that morphed into a little bit more exploration about what the Enfield muzzleloading rifle family was all about.
Right.
And started getting into what was interesting to me, which was the history and the application of some of the historical drills and procedures that related to that particular rifle, how they evolved and how they were conducted. So that's really how it became.
So your show just covers the Enfield and nothing else.
It did at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's why it's called British Muzzleloaders.
And in the trap.
Because I couldn't call it Canadian Muzzleloaders.
Right.
Because, quite frankly, my interest lies in the military kind of context.
Right.
So if we're talking about the muzzleloading era and Canada,
right.
Well, generally speaking, especially militarily, it's all British.
Right.
So I sort of had to really default to a really foundational kind of phrase to describe the channel. And
all
that's
right, so you're not British.
British Muzzleloaders came from.
So that's a lie. And then I was on there, and there's a lot of breech loaders.
It's called mission creep, Othais.
Look, I just named mine of C&Rsenal. You know what I got in there? Antiques.
Antiques, yeah, okay. You see, there's a nuance to the word that when you understand. That it doesn't necessarily have to mean what it says on the tin.
Okay, so the muzzle loader definitely means breech loading.
Doesn't have to,
okay.
But it can.
Are you picking apart the man's name?
And the British
I'm trying to think, everything we shot this week, 2 weeks ago or whatever, none of it was muzzle loading.
It's true.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah. Just, little bubbles pop up here and there that sometimes preclude a more righteous form of firearm use.
Have you considered just rebranding?
Calling it what?
Canadian breech loaders?
Listen, it's British Muzzleloaders.
Okay, I'm just trying to help.
That's good. All right. That actually worked out because the second question was what sparked his motivation, Rob specifically, into focusing on the drill and dress of the military, of the British military doctrines. So that actually worked out. You ended up going into the second question.
Yeah, how come you don't do Albanian or anything like that?
Have you seen Albanian rifle drill?
No, what's it like?
Oh.
So you're saying it's too hard?
Oh, look at that. Real Rob back, eh?
Snap! Rob wasn't ready for that. All right, next question, guys. Outside of the shooting you do for channel content, what sort of shooting do you do?
Hey, do you do your hobby shooting?
I would say my hobby shooting is along the same subject lines.
It's just the same stuff.
So it's generally the same stuff. My collection is what basically... there's more to my collection than what we see on the channel, but what my collection represents will all, at some point, be featured on the channel.
That's fair.
Yeah. So I don't have other things like anything modern or anything like that. In terms of my hobby, in terms of shooting recreationally, those kinds of things don't necessarily really scratch my itch.
Fair.
If that's the phrase that's suitable here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So generally speaking, no. Would there be older stuff, like really like matchlocky handgun stuff?
Yeah.
Kind of. That's interesting to me. I don't own anything like that.
Oh.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, you should get a handgun.
Yeah, that would be your British muzzleloader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for you, I know you talk all this revolver talk, but most of the days I'm seeing you shooting shotguns.
Oh, thank you. Oh, wow, that's fantastic. I love it.
What? Anyway, no, I have, for my personal shooting, I shoot more shotgun than anything else because it's inexpensive.
Yeah.
And then also it's available. There's a sporting place to the south of us, so I can go do that for a reasonable amount of money. Or, you can go get a box of clays. We have a thrower here, and I just go out on the range and just... Also, the utility on land on that is a lot easier. You can shoot shotgun in a much tighter space than you can shoot rifle because it's just birdshot. It just, So...
Like bad rain.
It's not even bad rain. It's the terminal velocity on it.
No, I would
nothing.
consider it bad rain in that it doesn't taste very good.
Anyway.
Wait, you've tried birdshot?
I've tried rain.
I actually want to do my little shotgun series because of that sort of interest in like what's going on with those. So if it's just for fun, it's probably going to be a little sport clay. And then I have a hand in modern rifle, but that's more of a utility thing. It's just, being up to date on current design and being able to properly use a semi-automatic rifle is just a thing that I keep as a tool, almost like a fire extinguisher kind of thing. Especially being here in the South in the United States, it's in the culture, so it's not weird to be invited to defensive handgun courses or things like that. So, do I have a handful of modern things around? Yes, they're very task specific. They're very utilitarian though. If it's whimsical, it's going to be the old stuff that's going to end up on the show. I actually can't wait to do the shotgun series because there's some weird stuff in there. And the commercial world is so much more bizarre than the military world sometimes. It's just that there's not as much story. Because it's like, hey, they thought this would be good and it wasn't. So
on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. But to be fair, the theater of it is just like, holy crap, that's weird. Why'd they do it? They thought it was a good idea. But why? I don't know. Because Billy's an idiot. That's the funny thing is there's no breakdown because they just went, I think it'll sell. Yeah.
And they're not trying to sell it necessarily to a government and all the
Right, they're
stuff
just, whatever gimmick will work in the market. Yeah.
I don't know if I should have also mentioned it, by the way. I didn't mention the names of the people that were asking the questions. Do you want me to, or you want me to keep them kind of anonymous?
I would...
First names?
They know that's their question.
That's true. To be fair, there actually weirdly wasn't a lot of overlap this time in terms of the same question being asked. So that was weirdly convenient.
No, they know that it's their question.
Yeah, they know who they are.
Yeah.
All right, next question. And then we'll take a pause for the cameras. What are you, Rob and Othais', sorry, my hands got in there. Woo. Favorite British firearms?
He's going to say the Enfield.
I don't think he can. I think his mustache will prevent him.
It begins with an B?
A B? Oh, what comes with a B? British muzzleloader.
It is a British muzzleloader. I don't know. For me personally, I think I have the most personal connection to my Baker.
Really?
Yeah, just because it's a rifle shop kit.
Yeah.
Those of you who are familiar with the rifle shop, their kits are more like...
You have like a whole video on it, right?
I did, yeah. I've got a couple of videos on the Baker.
No, on specifically your rifle shop kit Baker.
Oh yeah, I think I did it was a frequently asked question video.
Right.
Where does it come from? How do you get it? And all
that
kind of stuff, and the process involved with making it. So you can't really call it a kit. I don't think is the best way to describe it. A kit to me is something that you just simply put together. More of a part set.
Right.
That is between 50 and 80% complete in terms of finishing. So
you put a lot of work in it, though.
It does take a lot of work, and for an amateur like myself, more so.
Okay.
And a lot more stress. But because of that connection, I think that's probably the one that I feel, the most,
connection to.
Is that the way you say that?
Yeah, sure. I'm
the most
surprised he
connection.
didn't
Now,
say
where were
it.
the parts made?
The parts were made in Oklahoma.
So that's in the United States.
That would be it.
So they said British fire.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't say Lewis gun.
May save me.
No, I'm just gonna critique you for not saying Lewis gun, which is clearly the obvious answer to me.
Is that your favorite British firearm?
Probably yes, just because I've had the most. It's a personal thing. I've had a lot of experience with it. It's probably
You've had a lot of experience. Jesus, I've been in and out of that gun.
you
so many
have too.
times.
So that's my thing. Is that for
Where
me,
is
it's right behind you.
It's right behind you.
It's literally right behind you. That's probably the most experience with a British firearm that I have.
Is this in frame? I can't tell.
Hold on.
It's really awkward.
Keep holding it up.
Oh my god.
No, it's not really.
Okay, there we go. That's just behind me.
That's sort of in frame.
It's just...
What were we doing, Rob, that this had to come back around?
Will you fix the feet? Put them a little further out.
There.
Just don't drop the Lewis gun.
Don't
Okay.
drop the
On
Lewis
camera.
I've never dropped this one. Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff,
It's still in good shape.
thank you so much.
I gotta fix one thing on it though. That screw. I still haven't
Oh, was
fixed
it the screw? Okay.
Yeah, it's gotta get done. Anyway, so this is May's favorite.
It's honestly a personal thing because you love the Baker. You had a lot of personal experience with it. I have a lot of personal experience with the Lewis gun. Out of all the British firearms we've handled for this series, this is the gun that I single-handedly have the most experience with that is a British firearm, which is really weird to say. Never thought that was going to be the case.
For a British light machine gun of the Great War.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it just keeps coming back. It's like the cat that came back.
Yeah. This is its third time back with us now, so I'm happy to see it again. Happy to shoot it again.
This is your cousin, the Lewis gun.
Yeah, it keeps
Shows
coming to
up on
visit.
holidays.
Yeah, I'll feed it some Brunswick stew.
That was Project Lightning.
Yep.
And...
And our own series.
Our own
Oh, your
episode.
own episode of Lewis.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
we went
we
to
did
see
our own
it technically
episode.
the first time.
Yep, and then it came back for the
Then it came over to us.
for the series.
And then it came over for you.
Yeah, so this is its third time back here.
And it's a finicky little thing
tank.
sometimes. It takes you gotta
something to degree.
adjust little bits and bobs. And then to be honest with you, the last time around we had a spring break, and I didn't find a replacement at that time, but I did this time. And then you and I were working with it, and we had the gas piston had a failure.
That's right.
And so we had to get another gas piston. So when I went looking for parts, I managed to get some more parts in. So I've been in and out of this gun now for the fourth or fifth time because of little things going on with it. So I know how to run a Lewis. Like, I know how to time a Lewis gun. You sat there and watched me sit there and like...
So then clearly this gun is your favorite British.
No.
Oh, okay. What's your favorite British then?
Despite the fact that
We
he's
got 2 more minutes on the camera. I want to make sure I get your answer.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The Remington 14.5 was pretty rad.
That's not British. That's U.S. They just purchased it. No, actually, my favorite one right now, and we're too close to the episode, but it was kind of a passion episode anyway. It's that Enfield revolver.
He does love it.
Rob hates that gun so much.
Oh, my thumb.
To be fair to you, the ammo was giving us some difficulty.
This is a weak hand, evidently.
We went to shoot it, and the ammo, turns out we hadn't gotten the rims down thin enough, and so it was poor Rob's trying to cock the hammer, and we were gaslighting him because he's like, I can't cock that. There was an ammo issue. But we switched over to 450 Adams. Did it make it that much better?
Well, I was able to cock the weapon.
It was really... Rob and I've been teasing Rob for 2 days now because I found out that because I've been working with so many janky revolvers, like a Philippine 1902, I'm just like, yeah, it's really difficult.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just pulling the trigger, and then normal people are going, Jesus.
Yes.
So, no, I actually do like the Enfield, if only because it's such an evolutionary dead end that combined all of the best features that were available, sort of. Like, they're just
Sort
like,
of.
these are all great ideas. Let's just... God, it's awful. All right, camera swap?
Yeah, let's do a camera swap.
I'm waiting for you to go on that...
All right, next question. What gun is your favorite to take to the range? I feel like we kind of sort of... Well, no,
we
yeah,
haven't
in
said
British,
that, no.
yeah. So what's your favorite gun to actually take to the range with you?
Why don't you go first?
Ooh.
Favorite gun?
To take to the range.
Yeah.
This
So-
assumes that I just have the ammo to shoot it and enjoy it.
Yeah, let's just go with that.
Foul.
Foul? Yeah, foul is pretty good.
I got a hold of one a while back, and it just like, I did that thing where you're like, you knew the prices were kind of bumping up, and I went, I don't really need it, but I kind of want it, and I'm going to I'll put it aside, and worst case scenario, it'll be worth something a year from now, and once I started shooting it, I was just, I kind of like the foul. And by the way, mechanically, so wasteful. Like, you can really compact that action. It doesn't need to be the way that it is. It's not the most accurate, whatever. But mine's just got like fixed paratrooper sights on it. I'm still ringing at 400 easy, so it's fine by me. Like, if I'm smacking at 400 without too much effort, I'm okay. And depending on what ammo I feed it, I can stretch it out further. So I don't know. I just enjoy it. It's loud. It's big. I can carry it around by its little handle.
Mm-hmm.
So
I get that.
How does that go?
huh?
The
Like
little-
the little handle. I want to Dutch mine really badly. I can cut the parts that I have, but I don't. It's like I want to do a ship of Theseus thing. Like I'd like to. It's a SAR 4800. I'd like to I'd like to make a clone of the Dutch fowl because there's none in the market because the Dutch were really meticulous about cutting them up and not surplusing them. So I got a hold of the wood stock, which is like the hard part to get. And then the rest of it's like, okay, I'd have to recut the muzzle device. I'd have to recut the front sight and make a custom front sight and this other stuff. And then the magazine release is weird. And I just haven't had the money or inclination because I had to go get another barrel set, and those suddenly are very expensive. So it's sort of stuck being like half Dutch, half German, half South American, you know. That's just a horrible amalgamation at the moment. But it's just good.
Would it be historical enough to one day have a series on it?
I've actually talked to some of the guys over at DSA about getting something like that done, and they're amenable to it. So if I go to do the foul, I'd probably just go to them because I believe they have I think they have a collection of originals, like still in the original full auto and stuff like that for the ones that are, you know, L1A one's not, but you know, so there's some guns that semi-auto is great, and it's especially, you know, Canadians were first to market on that, so that's an easier one to cover here. But then there's other fouls that I'd like to cover in detail one of these days, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll go partner with them and get a hold of everything I need footage-wise.
Well, we would all look forward to that.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be an unrelenting request now. The problem is that's a big endeavor. That's a lot of countries to
How much use of it does it have across the globe, right?
Well, you know, like the Remington rolling block got all this adoption every which way, but there's only like 3 or 4 models realistically. I mean, are there little iterative changes? Sure, but there's only so many big whatever. But the foul, like, there's so many little changes that stack, but then they're used in totally different ways by different. I think you could probably do like a center line, and which you're like, okay, here's the foul, and then here's the major changes, like changing where the takedown lever is because of the inertia problem when they got loose, and then there's sort of the core functionality changes, and then there you have to do all these iterative things where it's like, well, this country didn't like this muzzle device, but this country did like that muzzle device, but this country went with wood, and this country went with plastic, and this went with steel, and so it's almost like. I do think you could kind of break it down into like one core design with a number of iteratives, and then those iteratives, how they're mixed and matched, get you these different countries. But that's a very like non-linear progression. Right. And so it would be a lot of organization on my part to sort of be like, okay, what's sort of the proto foul, which I guess is kind of like the C1A one is the closest you'd get on that end.
As far as service adoption, yeah.
Yeah, but then what are you working towards? You know what I mean? Like, how does this progress? So, like, a lot of people don't understand what we call paratrooper sight for the foul is the Dutch just adopted that as a fixed. Anyway, May's making a sign at me. We're going to go way too far down.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Rob, what's your favorite gun to take to the range?
Out of the rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Rob, what's
I'm
your
sorry,
favorite
we
one?
mentioned something that Rob also likes, so now we're both keeping
I know.
My favorite to take to the range. Oh man, I can't obviously say the Baker. That's already hogged a category.
I mean, it can be
It's your favorite.
No,
range.
it can be. But in terms of the P53.
Yeah.
Why? Because it has another soft spot in my heart because that's actually the rifle that started the channel.
Right.
I've probably shot it of all the rifles I have out to the farthest range, which is 700. I've shot it to.
Really?
Yes. And there's video.
Wait, you haven't been shooting Martinis out to 700?
Well, yeah, and I've shot those 2 at 700, but not at a metal target.
I mean, we got 700 yards in a metal target.
Are we going tomorrow?
We shot all our Martini. We shot all our Martini ammo yesterday. Have to make more.
I think just because of the fact that the ammunition, of course, has to be made completely, and the paper cartridge piece, my development of it, my version of it,
right.
and the bullets that I've had designed, the molds that I've had made, thanks to Brooks Molds in Montana, which is what enabled basically the channel to start by having finally a bullet that worked in a way that it was intended to work in the cartridge that it was intended to be made in. And coming up that whole process many years ago, I think that's probably the soft spot in my heart. Right. It's the P53, and then the other rifles of that family sort of cascading off of that. But the P53 in particular, mine, which happens to be a Parker Hale, although not original, is the closest you can get in terms of the functionality, the rifling, the progressive depth, and all that kind of thing. So definitely, and the fact that you shoot a Martini, it's traveling a little bit faster. The fact that I've shot steel with the Enfield out to such a range, and it has such a low velocity.
Yeah, just that delay.
The novelty factor of
what is the muzzle velocity on that?
Well, my cartridges shoot with the load I have about 950.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, so it's bang.
Oh.
Clang.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's by the time it actually hits and the sound comes all the way back.
That's awesome.
It is. It's fantastic.
It's like shooting in 1911 at like 700 yards. Just...
So it that's got that real soft spot because I mean, obviously, the newer you get, the more capable rifles become.
Yeah.
But the fact that, for me anyway, and the whole ammunition development piece and patterning those the molds, finding my way through the paper cartridge world, and ending up at a product and a combination that is pretty repeatable.
Okay.
You know, and once, of course, with a low velocity, big heavy bullet, the trajectory is so high. And firing at those ranges, you've got to find that range. But
you're like an artillery piece.
But once you find that range, it's so consistent. I find it. So I mean, I can just thinking about it, I was like, oh, I just love that.
So those were your favorite guns to take the range, but were they the coolest / most fun thing y'all have ever shot?
Is that a different question?
Yeah, it's a different question.
Okay, what's the coolest, most fun thing you've ever shot?
Because I get how favorite could also be the coolest, most fun, but were those, like, if not, what was your actual coolest, most fun thing y'all shot at the range? It can be for anything in general. It doesn't have to be show related.
I would say what's on the floor right now.
That
used to be right here.
Okay.
That for me was just an absolute. There's an element of kind of modernness to it.
Right, but it's a clockwork nightmare.
But it's a clickety-clackety, klukety-klukety thing.
Yeah.
It's everything's moving and the way the magazine turns in front of your face.
Plus you get to put your little mags on there and do the thing.
Yeah, I mean, but then sort of conversely to the mechanical kind of show that it is. Right. How incredibly stable it is.
Oh, once it's actually firing?
And, I mean, we were shooting at 400 yards of that target, which was 3 feet high. Yeah. That screen. But we were...
They haven't seen this yet, by the way.
But... No, but that's what we were doing. Yeah. And, I mean, I'm telling you, that thing was putting all of the rounds, the 30 rounds or whatever, that particular practice, all of them were right there. Yeah. You know, in the space of that much. At 400
it's impressive.
From a machine gun that you're holding in the shoulder. And that really surprised me. And it was like, wow, this is...
That's what surprised us with Project Lightning too. That it's so good with just making a hole with holes.
Working with Ian, it is the.
That's what it does.
That's so eloquently put.
Yeah.
It is presumably the first modern, like truly modern light machine gun in terms of its performative abilities, right? The closest other one, I guess, would weirdly be like we were working with a Hotchkiss Sportative, which can be put into the sort of like it can do it. You can shove it in there. Yeah. But the problem is all of our problems with the Hotchkiss Sportative were around the gun, like handling the gun itself and its weird feed mechanism and everything. But technically the gun itself could do the work. Right. Then the rest of them just couldn't do the work. Like they're just inherent problems with stability, with grouping, with trying to run them in bursts, there's just all sorts of weirdness. We got a lot of flack for how bad oh, you guys suck. I run a 249 and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, yeah, all the time. Like they would name these modern light machine guns that they had available. And you're going...
But is it an MG-0815?
Right, that's the problem. It's not an 0815 that's sitting there going... like just shaking the crap out of you.
I tell you, watching those videos, it was amazing how much of that inertia was being translated into moving that gun around. Oh, yeah. And like up and down, left and right. Like the violence of that.
Even the linear ones. Like just like... The Lewis gun, you get it dialed in and it just like...
And it just chugs along.
Like a train, yeah.
You can't do it. You can't dial a long recoil system like that, you know?
No. What about you, Othais?
Coolest stuff.
Yeah. How are you not saying you're sub 2000? Like that's so many people are yelling at the screen right now.
No, I think I weirdly like anti-tank rifles.
Never had the experience, so I can't comment.
Yeah. Tiger was pretty cool. I only got one round of it, though, because we were so short on ammo.
You also had a fever that day that we shot it. He had a 103-degree fever.
Yeah, I was like in the back of the truck bed, just like this, going, okay, did we get
it? Tell me when I have to shoot it.
No, I want to get one
watching
round
clouds. We were back then. We didn't have the filters we had, so we were just watching clouds, being like, "Nope, not yet. It's gonna."
Yeah, you saw we had hard flight problems,
minutes?
and we were stalling.
Right.
And we finally got behind the gun too far, and we were like, "No, we have to film this." But the day we went out, it's like patchy clouds, and we wanted really good light on it. So we were just waiting. We were just sit there, like it was boiling hot. I have a fever. I'm just laying there watching clouds. And like, here comes one. Okay, go. Okay. And we just film like one pass with it. And
then each round required the primer to be struck once, which we only found out, as we started filming.
We got them all set up, but the damn primers were like, none of them cooked the first time around. Wow. And we're like, is this all dead ammo? Well, let's try it again. So the first shot that May took is, I think we have high speed of it somewhere, she's surprised it went off because it's the first one that went off and it's the 6th time she pulled the trigger. Mm-hmm. It was really funny.
That round took
great.
6 tries to shoot?
No. It was every round took 1 try, and we thought maybe they're all duds or not. We'll go back in because we thought maybe we had a primer problem.
So each one had at least 1 hit on it, and then finally it was the second hit, and luckily all of them went off with that.
The second hit, wow.
Yeah. So then it started running, but only because they'd been primed. You know what I mean? Like, so that was a crazy whole day.
Wonderful.
But the gun was cool as crap. Mm-hmm. Also, it might have just been more exciting because I was in front of the muzzle the first time because I was running the front camera, and we're doing that thing where none of them have gone boom yet, and we're like, oh my god, we wasted this whole day due to a primer malfunction. You know.
Well, he wasn't in front of the muzzle. He was just with a camera that was close to it.
As bulletproof as he is.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but I'm like.
He felt the muzzle, the blast.
I'm set up watching a camera, and we're going through this whole thing, and I'm like, muzzle's here, and I'm alongside. You know what I mean? And it's pointed well away from me, but I'm trying to get this front camera set up and moved, and I'm making sure that everything's getting footage. Just other people are watching the back cameras. I'm watching the front, and I'm expecting like anything else. I've been around Barretts that have gone off and stuff, but at the time, we didn't know it was going to go boom. So all of a sudden, it's just like, and I was like, oh my god, I forgot that I was like, because with the fever and everything, I'd forgotten that I was just in the wash.
Right.
And I was like, I'm awake.
Yeah.
So
That was a pretty good one. We'll do one more question, then we'll take a pause. What's your favorite thing about shooting black powder firearms?
Well, you shoot a lot of those.
Like your favorite...
One or two.
Mm. Yeah.
Favorite thing?
Yeah, your favorite thing about them.
Well, it's probably the I would say pedanticness of it, but the pace, generally shooting black powder.
Just that it's such a long, drawn-out process.
And of course, that's increased through muzzle loading, because obviously the Martini and the Snyder and those kinds of things that I shoot are black powder as well. But even so, they're all breech loaders, so the pace is slower.
Right.
There's no magazines that you're filling up and then emptying and that kind of stuff. And I think there's a sort of pride of ownership with making all your own ammunition, which invariably needs to be done when you're shooting a black powder rifle. That you're invested in every single one of them. You've made all of them, and yes, you're expending them and shooting your target or whatever you're doing with them.
You're describing a nightmare to other people.
Yeah, you see, to me, that they may be more complex in terms of all the little pieces that need to go into it or the steps, but really they're not that much different. There's still seating depths and neck tension and all those kinds of normal things. So it's just with the addition of a couple of extra steps, for me, that's okay. And that's perhaps one of the things that I enjoy about black powder shooting in general.
May, what's your favorite part of black powder?
I honestly love the smell of them.
Yeah. And the throaty boom. The
throaty boom with the smell. Like something about that combination. It's just like, I don't know, a cigar on the back porch at sunset kind of thing. Like it's poetic in and of itself, I guess.
I like all the stuff that comes with them.
All the accessories.
You got all your little kit. You got to get your little bag, and you got a little powder flask.
He does like
and you gotta get your
accessorizing.
little balls.
Oh, I know about accessorizing.
Yeah.
Most of mine's white buff leather, but anyway.
No, but
God, cleaning that.
It's interesting how much it's like a network of stuff to handle the gun. It's not just, okay, here's a gun, put the ammo in it. Yeah. You have to have all these things. And then even when stuff goes wrong, you're like, do I have an extractor? Like you have to have the kit. And it's actually kind of entertaining.
As somebody who's a collector, I can understand how that's your favorite.
Oh, yeah. I got my little Possibles bag with all my stuff in it. Oh, yeah.
All right, let's take a pause for the cameras.
That's a grizzly knife is sharper than
Oh, no, I forgot my knife. Sorry. Yeah.
They're prepping him for the range. If you could have any one firearm, modern or antique, regardless of legalities, what would it be?
Oh, if you could have anything.
Yeah. Even you, Rob, could have anything.
Now we can delve into the world of...
But we still have to consider money, right?
Theoretical?
I'm thinking you don't have to consider money, because he's saying regardless of legalities even, so I would think even regardless of, if you could afford it or not.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about affording the ammo less than the gun. Like, if I could just have the gun, but having the gun's different from having the ammo, And even if it was legal, some ammo is expensive and hard to get a hold of.
Fair.
Sorry, I was just gaming it out.
No, that's fine.
Because my initial thought was like, those quick fire guns. Like the old naval quick fires.
Like a Hotchkiss,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
like 2 pound or something.
yeah. We got one down at the gardens in Charleston. Actually, it's. I mean, all the stuff's been pulled off. It's just the barrels essentially. But like, I was like, I want to play with that.
Sure. Okay.
You also hear about them used as like light artillery in the Boer War and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm just like,
I guess I think any Canadian firearms enthusiast has been denied for a very long time you've already mentioned it.
Oh, the FAL?
Would be the FAL.
Oh, yeah. You guys got ripped on that.
Yeah, that's just another one of our crazy...
It's so bizarre, like, what you couldn't... Because you guys could have the M14 all day, right?
Well, up until recently.
Or like the M1A, it'd be semi-automatic.
Yeah.
But you couldn't have a semi-automatic FAL. That's
right.
That's weird.
That's so... It's the same cartridge as semi-automatic. If anything, the FAL's less portable in some ways. It's so bizarre.
Especially, it falls into my historical niche.
Right.
Just at the far end of it, the far right. And, to be able to do a continuing and easily accessible full series on it would be wonderful. And it's just, in terms of...
How long did Canada still issue that rifle?
Up until the last FNs were replaced in the early 90s. From the Reserve Army.
Okay, so the only guys that shot those in the reserves would be like really old, weird people now.
No, not at all.
Okay. Let's do the next question then. What has been the most disappointing gun that you've ever shot?
That's hard.
That is really hard. Is there such a thing?
It could be like you had expectations of it to perform a certain way or to be easier to handle, but then when you actually got it in your hands...
I feel like I do have answers to this, and I'm struggling to remember. Like, there's something buzzing around in my head.
Is there? I can tell you what was surprising to me, the most... I guess disappointing to a word, in terms of I was expecting something a little bit better, maybe in the accuracy department, and it just... I haven't got to the point where I was meeting my expectations, is I've got a pattern 1844 yeomanry carbine, which is a smoothbore percussion cavalry carbine. Right. And that thing can barely hit like a 4-foot target.
Well, it's a smoothbore carbine.
At 50 yards. I mean, like it's, wow. As you said, I didn't have high expectations, and it didn't even meet that.
Is it thin barreled or something? Like, what's going on with it?
Well, it's a fair, I mean, it was... the ammunition I'm using, I've tried a number of different sizes of round ball in it. Right. Loading it in the traditional way in a paper cartridge, some of which are the maximum. I gained a little bit of sort of advantage in the accuracy department, but still, I mean, I can hit that 50-yard target, but at 100, hitting a man-sized target at 100 yards is, so far in my experience, been matter of luck rather than anything else. And I mean, the barrel is only that long. But for a disappointing result, I would say that has to be mine as I personally experienced that.
Mickey, you think of anything?
I'm just trying to think of if there actually has been anything that...
I feel like I'm forgetting something, because I swear we've gotten a hold of some fancy stuff that I've just gone,
I'm trying to do that thing where I'm like, is there anything for the... Because most of the stuff I end up shooting these days is for the series. I actually rarely end up shooting anything
No, it was definitely a series gun. There's some pistol or something I'm trying to remember that was so exotic and rare, and we finally got a hold of it and I went, oh, that's awful. I will say one of the most disappointing things is like...
it wasn't the Filipino Colt, was it?
No, because I knew that was insane.
Yeah, we knew. Really.
Yeah, I was warned on that.
I was actually more impressed with how terrible it was. I wasn't even disappointed. I was more impressed as a result of it.
I have a weirdly strong index finger, so I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. But, Huh?
I don't.
Yeah. Normal? No. Everyone else is like... I'm sitting there going, yeah, it's really stiff, but...
I mean, I had to train with a hand strengthener. Technically, I trained with a Montenegrin first. We had a junk Montenegrin I was using as my hand strengthener, and then I had to train with an actual hand strengthener once the Montenegrin became a little too easy.
The Bergman semi-auto, which actually ran fine.
Yeah.
But my big problem with the Bergman semi-auto is the minute I got it in my hand for the first time, I went, oh, because the grip is so small. And you're just like... It just feels weird, and you're going, why is there no... And the Danish ended up fixing it. They made these big grips for them that feel fantastic. But I wouldn't say the gun itself was disappointing. It was just like this horrible ergonomic grip. Oh, maybe like the FN 1903/Swedish 07, that blowback 9mm Browning.
Yeah.
Because that is a gun that looks very handsome. Mm-hmm. And you think, okay, it's like a Browning, whatever, but it's on lock breech. Mm-hmm. And you start, I don't know if you've shot one of those. Nope. They are snap. I mean, they're you go boom, and it's just like, it's just all over the place because in trying to drive the gun, they don't give you any heel. Mm-hmm. That might be the one I'm thinking of, actually, because that is a very handsome gun that is very hard to use by comparison to what it should be. And there's plenty of room and weight allotment to even make it a lock breech, and they just didn't do it. Mm-hmm. That one probably is... Actually, yeah, especially after shooting like the Colt 1902, which is similarly sized and similarly calibered.
Yeah.
Why don't you just have the Colt 1902? Why did you do that?
All right. I realized I was sitting here for a second. I realized why I can't think of my most disappointing gun, because if anything, it's become series of guns, because I used to love revolvers as much as I did. And then having to shoot so many weird ass revolvers throughout this entire series has made me so disappointed in them in terms of performance
only like
Smith
and Wesson K-frames.
However, I can appreciate the mechanics of them way more than I used to. I understand them now more, and I love learning about the history of them and the internal workings of them. That's been a lot of fun. So my appreciation for that portion of them has drastically increased. Use and performance-wise is severely depreciated in appreciation. So there is that. Next question. What's the worst service rifle you've covered for your show when compared to its contemporaries?
Well, it's got to be like the
I can't answer that because every single British service arm of its contemporaries is far superior to anything else that's out there.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Jesus.
Dang.
Oh, come on.
I'm going to say it. The Snyder is not the best breech lighting conversion.
No, it's not. Nope, I agree.
Yeah.
I was joking when I said that.
I'm just going to say the Snyder's not the best breech lighting conversion.
It's second best.
Oh, okay. It's got to be the Italian, though, right? That Federally 6.5. Have you seen that thing?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Because it was technically a service rifle, and its contemporaries, even in the Italian military, were like a Carno, which was way better. Yeah. Like, just unbelievably better.
Carnos, they can be in terrible shape, and they still just are tanks. They'll just run.
Yeah. I can't think of anything that's like...
They won't explode on you, which is really nice.
Especially service rifles. I can think of some pistols, like, again, the Philippine 1902, where you're going, guys, there's so much else available. Why did you do this, you know? But in terms of rifles, I have some problems with, like, the Vigero. Mm-hmm. Just in terms of they hybridized in a way that was totally unnecessary, and they ended up with an inferior product, I think. Mm-hmm. But it still works fine. It's just that it has some vulnerabilities that they're mild. Like, I think it has bad out of battery rotation and stuff like that. But and then I mean, maybe the Mosin in terms of being overbuilt, like. The Mosin is not everybody will argue with me because they're like, oh, you hate the Mosin. I'm like, no. And it's, by the way, my argument against the Mosin isn't that it's like, the people that say they don't like it, they say it's cheap garbage. And I'm like, no, it's expensive garbage. Like, it's a pencil barrel that only has so much accuracy in it because it's just the Lebel barrel. That's all it is. Yeah. So Mosin's as accurate as the Lebel. They're the same barrel. The problem with the Mosin is, it's just unnecessarily complicated. Just the magazine system is unnecessarily complicated. The bolt is unnecessarily complicated. There's just so many interacting surfaces that are unnecessary. So is it inferior? Well, when you actually go to shoot it, probably not that crazy different from other contemporaries. But in terms of the amount of effort you're putting in to get what you get out of it, you know, there's some vulnerability there. But that's the thing is, when you're talking about service rifles in the bolt action era especially, you're not... Oh, you know what would be a weird...
You know, I know what mine is. So.
What? What'd you just figure out?
Well, you can finish your...
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, for me, it's got to be the Ross. Of the collection that I shoot.
Really?
That, in terms of its...
Wait, which Ross?
The Mark III.
Okay.
Just because of its contemporaries and the history that you guys as well have explored to a high degree, that if you compare that Ross in the state that it was when it went into service... Right, and that's the caveat there. I'll look forward to
some questions later on because there are totally some Ross questions in here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That for me, that probably would be the one.
Well, especially because
that's not my personal opinion of it, but if I understand the question, was in its relation to its contemporaries,
right,
it had some obvious deficiencies.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, in terms of what
the problem is they're too obvious. Like, it's one of those things where you're going, hold on, the core of this rifle is fantastic. why did you screw up these handful of things that really ruin it, you know?
And the fact that the way they all fit together and they compound each other.
Yep.
And that was,
Yeah, cascading garbage.
All right. When do you consider something sufficiently researched for your shows?
a minute before you produced the video.
What do you're kind of an open floor plan, right? Like your schedule is you release it when you have it under control, right?
That's the sort of the
crux
of my gig for sure.
Right.
And that's just time based basically.
Yeah, we're on a 2-week rotation, so it's sufficiently researched when I run out of time. There's lots of stuff that honestly every episode I feel like I could go deeper on, but the problem is I don't have the time, money, and access to get into every archive to double check everything. And there's a lot of spots where I clearly go, they say, if you listen to me when I speak in the show, I'll go, it said this, like I start getting one step removed from the data that I don't necessarily trust entirely. So I'm an aggregator of data, and then a little bit of little tiny sliver of primary research when I can get it in. So I'm almost never happy with all the data that we have available. That's rare that I'm happy with the data we have available.
It's true.
But I have to keep moving with the story that we have, and then so every primer is a reflection of what's the best data at that time.
Which is why a lot of the earlier primers are as limited as they are in terms of the research that we had, because we just didn't have the resources.
Frankly, I think I've sufficiently researched it when I feel like it's going to be at least 2 years before somebody tells me I'm wrong. Because that means I've met the standard for every currently living expert with the data that they have on hand at that moment. Which means that the moment an episode releases, if no one can tell me I'm wrong, I've definitely won that one. But the problem I'm always fighting is 2 years later somebody uncovers something and you go, crap. So that's the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And I mean, the breadth of subject material that you guys cover is so enormous. That research machine.
That research machine.
This research machine is just, I mean...
To be fair, it's more of a reading machine that is very friendly with a bunch of research machines. Because I go around and do you know me? I'll talk to anybody. And I just okay, what do you got? Who do you know? And I just run it down from people that have been running it down. And thankfully, most guys are very friendly with their data.
It's true. What was something that you learned while researching it for an episode that has stuck out the most to you? I know you've got some episodes you want to do in the future, so the problem is that there's something that stuck out recently that stuck in my brain that I know you can't say right
I can't cover it.
So we're talking about kind of light bulb moments here, like, I didn't know that.
I like the Montenegrin one. That wasn't a good one.
Oh, yeah, I love that one.
My finger is going to come into shot.
Montenegrin gassers were illegal in Montenegro.
Yeah, that was, oh my God, that one stuck out to me so good.
Yeah, they had so many Belgian clones and stuff coming in that they went back and said, no, it's got to be like a gasser, and it's got to be in this configuration and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And so the ones that everybody calls Montenegrins were almost never used in Montenegro because they were immediately found to be so inferior that they're just like, so they write Montenegrin on them, or they write, Nicholas whatever on them, Mm-hmm. And... No, we're completely verboten. Like, especially the short barrels. Like, a lot of them have those little short barrels. No, that wasn't allowed. You had to have the long barrel, So, it's weird, but going back in the accounts, when I was looking at the accounts, every guy that was in that went through Montenegro and commented on it talked about the length of the barrels. So, these little short-barreled Belgian Montenegrin gassers that we see everywhere. No, not remotely used by Montenegro. However... probably used extensively by Ottoman officers because they were cheap, available in the cartridge that they had available in the Ottoman Empire, which is that 11mm gasser.
Right.
And I've talked to guys that there's a gentleman I spoke to that does a lot of digs in the along what was the old rail line and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he said they pull up the cartridges and they pull up those revolvers in various states of decay all the time. Those Belgian-made knockoff gassers were like Ottoman, like clearly used by the Ottomans.
I guess for me, the thing that I wasn't aware of, this is going back a ways now, was in the process of just learning about the baker as much as I could, far past the point of any, sharps this or sharps that, I ended up buying a book by DeWitt Bailey on British military flintlock rifles, which is a fairly well-known volume now. But when it came out and bought it, and then it focused a lot of it on the baker and had a lot of really fantastic information, primary source stuff and whatnot. But before it got to the Baker, it discussed rifles that came earlier. Some of the German imports that were used by some of the German mercenary troops in various times in the 1700s and whatnot. And what came out of that book that I was completely unaware of was this pattern 1776 rifle, which was in fact, although the Baker sometimes holds the claim as being the first sort of British service rifle,
Right.
The 1776 is demonstrably the first one. And that's something that I didn't know. And it comes out of a German heritage as well. The first patterns, in fact, are German, made in Germany. And then they change the design slightly and reflects more sort of British aesthetic.
Right.
But short barrel, very much a Jaeger style rifle. And I had no idea of that. And sort of it presented in this book in one of those kind of eureka moments.
Does anybody offer a kit for one of those?
The rifle shop does as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we happened to see one in Pennsylvania in March.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it.
When are you going to build that kit?
It's been sitting on the desk for a long time now. I have to get back to it. Very much a similar kind of build to the Baker, with those damn barrel keys that you've got to cut into the stock. That said, I really like the look of that kind of rifle, and I'm looking forward to eventually getting it done.
Nice.
And of course, then it will be featured on the channel.
Oh,
so
okay.
that was probably the biggest kind of eureka thing that I had no idea about, and in the process of researching something else, it appeared. So
It's a good year for a rifle.
I also enjoyed finding out about Colt's personal history.
Just the complete insanity of Samuel Colt.
I know that's a more commonly known thing now, but it was Ross, like, terms of just insanity.
Yeah, just a complete lunatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's kind of more of a narcissistic lunatic. Well, I guess no, Ross is too. Oh, never mind. They'd be great. They'd be terrible together.
Colt was probably one of the most aggressive salesmen that ever existed, and it worked out really well for him.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a pause for the cameras. Next question. When are you both coming back to the BMF shoot?
well, I guess there's two layers that need to fit on.
Okay.
Individual schedules and having those schedules meet, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both have to be there.
That's what I mean. That's what the question
I
is.
just when are you both coming back?
Yeah. So for me, just getting there in the first place is a bit of a journey.
Right.
I wish I could attend more regularly, but even sort of every other couple of years, perhaps, is a bit of a stretch for me, especially given the time of year that it's normally in, which is October.
Yeah.
Which is a very busy time for me. So it needs to be a very deliberate and well thought before evolution for me. So
I didn't see you at October one.
no, because the one we saw each other at was an anniversary shoot in March.
Yes.
So
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
October is actually quite a busy month for us as well.
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not to be
Every end of year, it seems like it gets crazy around here.
Mm-hmm.
I intend to go again at some point, but I can't say when. Unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't think we can either.
Well, we can't this year. I know that because
Yeah.
we're trying to really limit travel this year. We noticed we went back and kind of did the numbers, and a lot of the travel we were doing was getting us nowhere. Not that we don't like seeing people or anything, but right now the way YouTube's punishing us, we kind of like. Is it the core of the business? No, but we kind of got the business where it was paying for itself pretty good. And then we're like, oh, we can make a little bit of investment here in where we want to go. Mm-hmm. But now YouTube's kind of pushing us down, and it creates this situation where you go, okay, we need to double up on doing more interesting things that have yield, right? So that means a further expenditure. But at the same time, YouTube's taking away all of our ad rev, which had finally just gotten to the point where it was a reliable sum of money that was actually useful, and now it's gone. I mean, gone. So Ballistol has helped with some of that, but not even all of that at this point because YouTube's being very aggressive with us. Wow. And so we have to kind of sit there and make a business decision of like, okay, look, it's very fun, but there's got to be some sort of actual payout in what we're doing going forward because we can't let the business falter over the course of the next year. And again, it's not dire now, but it's going to be. It's like having a radiator leak. You can't just leave it. It'll eventually empty out. So or the crack will open up wider. So we just have to be careful. So we're going to be a little more cautious this coming year. We're going to pick very carefully where we're going, when we're going, and that it has a material benefit.
Yep.
So it might be a little bit, unfortunately, unless things get easier.
I would love to see you guys there again.
Oh yeah, I mean it was a great time. Everybody was really friendly. Made a lot of friends. Like no complaints. But me personally, I'm stuck because I'm welded to this business, and I got to make sure that it like works.
Yep.
So
I agree. All right. Next question. What was each of your favorite moments from the collaboration you recently did? Because, again, a lot of people haven't seen the collab because the videos haven't come out yet. However, we have been talking to our patrons about it.
I know my favorite moment, but I want to hear Rob's first.
I think I might know what yours is, too.
Really? Okay, I'm going to let you guess mine in a minute.
All right. Because I believe I'm fairly certain on that one.
Wait, did yours have something to do with...
Go on, tell your favorite
Why is petting
one.
your mustache at him a thing?
Because Rob's remembering his favorite moment. But he didn't even know he was in it until it was later.
Exactly.
Our buddy Tom put virtual reality goggles on Rob.
Was that really your favorite moment? Is that where you were going?
No, he thinks my favorite moment was, and I have a video of this, we could probably even find it, but Rob's in this VR game, he's trying to look around a corner. But he doesn't realize he's a room full of people. I mean, he does, but not really, because we're being quiet. So he doesn't realize how close he is. So he's basically leaning in on me. You know what I mean? Like, he's coming right at me, but he can't see. He's wearing these virtual goggles. So he's like doing this, and I'm just like filming him with my camera. And I just take my finger and I just I stroke his mustache. But because he's puffing away and talking and stuff, he doesn't even notice I did it. So I showed him the video later, and he's just laughing because he didn't even know that I just like whooped right across his mustache.
Oh my God.
This creepy figure comes into the camera.
But that's not my favorite moment. No.
I'm not going to say it was mine either.
Okay.
Oh, wait, he's rubbling his mic.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
Bad Rob.
As long as he doesn't leave it there. Was it barbecue?
That was pretty good.
Because I watched you eat enough barbecue to like fall asleep.
I can give mine if it would be give you guys a moment.
What's
to
your
think about
favorite
yours.
moment?
I liked it. The setting, the animate deer.
Animate.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the word animator and deer setting.
Oh,
setting
Bruno dressed as a reindeer?
Yeah.
Oh, that was this week. That wasn't even the core collab.
That's still part of the collab, I would
I
argue.
mean, yeah, but still, like
that was one of my
dressing
favorite
Bruno up
parts.
like a
Dressing
reindeer
Bruno
for
up
the
like a
fallen.
reindeer and setting him down with a martini.
We can't say too much about that photo though, because it's still a surprise.
I know. I mean, to be fair, like the photo, we put that little one of Bruno set as a deer on Instagram, but
yeah, just Bruno as a reindeer is your favorite moment?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. That was hilarious.
I don't know. This has been an incredible journey.
I
know. I'm waffling. I know.
All right, fine. Do you know?
Go first.
What's your guess on my favorite thing, man?
Well, I thought it was going to be that, but now I know.
Oh, really?
Really?
You thought it was the mustache too?
I thought it was too, but it wasn't.
Wow, that's such a highlight for you guys.
Which?
The mustache brush, yeah.
I was wrong, apparently. So what was your favorite?
My favorite was when Rob was struggling with, I can't remember if it was the Bren or the Lewis gun.
It was the Lewis.
It was the Lewis? He was struggling.
I don't know.
He was struggling with it because it was hitting outside of the range that we had figured out for him.
Yes, that's what it was.
And he was going nuts for like 10 minutes. And I was just... and finally, he said something numerical that didn't... It finally clicked in my brain that he thought the numbers were wrong. Like he said, I can't even remember what this range was. It was like 200... You thought it was 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
No. You thought it was 200 yards, but it was actually 300 or something like that. But all of a sudden, you said blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, 200, blah, blah, blah. And I went, yeah, but this is 300. And you went, what? And I went, we're at 300 yards. He goes, no, we're at 200 yards. And I went, 1, 2, 3. We're at 300 yards. That's why your group's all off. And he went, God damn. Like just how angry you were at yourself in that moment. And I went,
it's not me.
It's not just me.
Because
that happens all the time. All the time. It's why our motto is we're not experts. We're determined idiots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, determined idiots is the key word. Because I'm just going, oh, thank God. Okay. Because up until that moment, I was like, God, Rob really knows what he's doing. I'm a complete idiot. And then I was like, he can't count to 3.
Well, there's another moment that we had when we were...
the sight drifting?
The stand, and I had it in my mind that the sight had to go that way.
The worst part about that...
And it kept getting bigger.
We went both ways on this. You kept shooting more and more off of Justin, and you're drifting the front sight to the point that's barely holding on. And I'm going, Rob, drift it the other way. And you're like, no, because we had this whole argument about it. And then not 2 days later, something else was going on the sights. I was like, okay, drift it left. And he goes, no, drift it right. And I went, we already went through this. But then I was wrong.
But admittedly, it was the other way around.
Yeah. So, like, we were 1 for 1 on that one.
I remember looking down at that sight, and the whole thing, I mean, it's literally cantilevered off the side of the receiver. I'm like, okay, this is not right. And I pushed it back, and I hit the target.
It was like a cripple sight.
Oh, it was incredible. It would look like an offset sight, like on the Bren. Or,
no, yeah. Have you ever seen a cripple sight? It's they used to have cripple stocks, right, where somebody lost their right eye. And
oh, so you could shoot down the other side, yeah.
Or the left-handed right eye, or whatever, So you had the stock would come all the way over. And then they realized, I think it was Greener or somebody realized, wait, why are we doing all that when we could just take the sights and put them on rods and stick them over? So it's like the sight's on a rod that sticks off to the side of the gun.
That's pretty much what it was like.
So that you could be like, if you lost your right eye, you could shoulder it with your right hand and be in front of your left eye.
Oh.
That'd be pretty good, actually. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. Well, we're getting into some more specific stuff here. So buckle down, boys. We're ready to go. All right, first question on this section. Could improper or overly enthusiastic loading of a rifled musket damage the rifle and cause accuracy issues, or were rifled muskets not accurate enough for that to be a problem?
They are plenty accurate.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
They're plenty accurate.
I was going to say, you can damage the rifling if you blow the whole damn thing up. So.
Oh, sure enough.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, say this again? What's the question?
Could improper or overly enthusiastic loading of a rifled musket...
Oh, you're talking about the rod.
So yeah, like actual loading. Like if
you're just getting
over-enthusiastic
what's the rod usually made out of?
Steel.
Could that actually damage the rifle?
Yeah. Well, iron, but...
but it's an iron barrel, right?
They had an iron tip on a steel rod.
Oh, so you could actually use iron, possibly.
It was all...
was it steel barrel or iron barrel?
Iron barrel.
But like he was like, basically, could you damage it enough to actually cause accuracy issues, or were they just really not that accurate enough for that to be that big of a problem if they took some damage?
So what happens is if you are not mindful of your crown, muzzle crown, is especially over repeated use, is that all over time you can wear out, especially a proper or a Parker Hale pattern Enfield, because the rifling is 5 thou deep at the muzzle, so it's not deep at all. So there's not a lot of wiggle room for damage. But in using the ramrod, it's going to rattle if you don't take precautions. Right. It's going to rattle against that crown, that being the last piece of the barrel that touches the bullet. Mm-hmm. You stand over time. Yeah. To damage the rifle. Now, if you do it once or twice or 3 times, is it going to damage it noticeably? Not necessarily.
Unless it does.
Unless you somehow manage to do something.
Unless you did
something amazing.
Right?
That's less the enthusiasm and more the sort of like windmilling.
Yeah, I mean, in your enthusiasm of trying to push the ramrod down, it's going to rattle. Okay. Right? I mean, ultimately, they weren't... they are service rifles. They were designed with that in mind to a degree that...
To have the enthusiastic soldier.
Sure, under what kind of stress or whatnot. So, I mean, if you happen to clang the ramrod against the side of the barrel once or twice as you're recreational shooting, you're not going to take.
But to be fair, they weren't supposed to be in service for 100 years.
Well, that's the other piece to it, right? Mm-hmm. They're a service rifle. So
you're getting them all worn. Everything is as is. Yeah. All right. In your research of the history, development, and deployment of more than several small arms, have you noticed a certain theme of the process that sticks out? And this person says they notice that all designs have compromises even to this day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, compromise is always the case. Well,
compromises and aversion of patents. Like, they want to try to avoid stepping on any toes to avoid sort of
that's a legal necessity, but I'm thinking more like...
There's also a patronage piece in there, too, trying to vie
against
each other to get the contract, to get your name put on that particular part or that bullet or
maybe
whatever.
Having it go for a certain ammo or something like that if you need to have that focus.
Honestly, the biggest theme I've noticed is, how do I put this? I'm trying to think of how to say it. Institutional momentum. Like, it feels like if you can get the ball started rolling... and it gets over the peak, there's no stopping it, no matter how dumb your idea is. And no matter how good the idea is, if you can't get the ball rolling, it's never going to go. It's like a human nature thing. I don't know about you, but at least in terms of the research I've seen, it's like we were talking about the infield revolver. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And it bothers me because we just did those episodes. I don't know when the ball started rolling. And that's actually the part that I really like to see when we talk about these developmental things. I like to see the part where I go, and then whatever, oh, good Lord. You have the hill, right? The hill. And somebody's pushing it up the hill. They're pushing up the hill, whatever the stupid idea is. And once you get to this apex, there's no stopping it. It is going to roll over the other end, you know? And I just want to know where that moment was. And I can't find it for the Enfield because it kind of goes dark. They don't really explain who was behind it because it's all committee. It's not in the notes that are available anymore.
It's because the first guy took it up to the range and went, what?
I think somebody later on like went, I'm just gonna burn all it. Like, because I mean, there's no clarity as to who was that first person that's just like, all right, we're gonna put these two things together. Yeah, you know, and so. But you see it all the time, right? You see it where it's just like, what is this thing that and then they're on it. They're doing it. Now we're doing it. But we've always been doing it. We've never not been doing it. This is the best rifle that ever was. No matter how awful it is.
Fair enough.
I think I see that with the Lee Enfield too, but everybody gets mad at me for that.
In what way?
Just the number of iterative design changes to the Lee rifles in British service is insanity. Like, let's be honest. Like, they could have taken a totally different tack on the second iteration, but they were already committed because that ball started rolling. And so they have to constantly update this one rifle to finally get what is, everybody agrees is the pinnacle, I guess, would be like the short magazine Lee Enfield Mark III at the early set. But even then, by World War II, they're going, God, can we get this barrel under control? We don't like the dampener. You know, we want to do this we want to do like a heavy barrel. We want to do a rigid receiver. They're still doing it into World War II. And a lot of those problems have been resolved on other platforms earlier, but there's no huge amount of institutional momentum behind sort of the core elements, you know,
or money for that matter.
Yeah, and then I mean, being in Canada, you know, it's very hard to make a Lee Enfield, like compared to other rifles. When they tried making them for World War I, they said, "Hey, can we have the Americans make this?" And they just went, "No, we can't. We can barely get our own empire to make it. You know, it takes forever to get them spun up on it because it's just so particular for manufacturers." So they said, all right, we'll do the P14. And then the Americans f***ed up making that anyway. But, you know, you get the idea. There's some guns that are just hard to make. And, like, Lee Enfields, once you know how to make them, sure, you know how to make them. But they're hard to make. So it's like that gun, more than anything, to me, represents, like, institutional momentum. Where once it was started, it was like, okay, well, we're just dealing with this. And we're going to... I guess you can see it in the AK as well these days. Because the AK is, like, the core's fine, but once it was like up and running, and by the way, extremely hard gun to get up and running, well, in terms of manufacturer. But once you're manufacturing it, you're manufacturing it. So then you can just do little iterative changes, you know. But it's all momentum.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's take a pause for the cameras real quick.
A lot of suspicious people in my neighborhood lately.
Guess what the name of the first practice is?
Practice number 1.
Well, do you want to do this?
What is
You
it?
know all the answers?
I did say it was number 1, and then you walked over there and messed with your laptop. Oh, I kicked your camera.
Do I have to check that?
I mean, double check it, but it's probably fine. Go stand over there, though, on the pallet.
Buffering.
Buffering.
There we go, buffering. It's good. Still going. You're just filming me in case I fall in the water. Right?
Oh, definitely, yes. Look, you get to stand on the pallet. Nuts to you. Look at my feet.
All right, next question. Do you think the 280 Ross could have gone somewhere?
Cartridge?
Yeah, the cartridge, I'm assuming.
Yeah, very far, very fast.
I was going to say the same thing.
Isn't it like comparably like decent for American game, essentially, North American game?
It's a good cartridge, period. I mean, like, well, I shouldn't say period. There were some elements that were proving to be a little difficult with it, but, like, I mean, really all it is a high speed, low trajectory, you know, like flat, fast, smack, right? Like super small bore, long range guns. We see it come back every so many years. And yeah, it probably was valid, but then again, so were a lot of the other cartridges available at the time. And then when it came down to it, turns out they didn't need to shoot that far or that flat when they got into an actual warfare scenario. I think some of that all came from the bores, like being out in the veldt and having to really deal with long ranges drove a lot of interest in having a very, very, very long range cartridge. But then it fell off quickly when they actually started having to fight in any sort of other environment. I mean, there's always this. If you're not fighting on the veldt and you're not fighting in Antarctica, you don't necessarily need to be that clear-sighted for that long. I mean, I guess there's some alpine shooting, but more often than not, there's going to be corners and camouflage. And, you know, I think you're looking for a level of performance that's not really all that necessary. So, I mean, did it have legs? Yeah. It would have been, people would have loved it as much as anything else if it actually had the momentum behind it like we were talking about. But I just don't, I mean, what do you think? Have you ever worked with it really? Or?
Not the 280, no. But in the research that I've done anyway, you really see this imprint on the British Army and by extension the armies of the Empire
Right.
after the Boer War.
Right.
And everything starts turning into long range. In the artillery, like the 60-pounder that is the sort of divisional heavy artillery piece in the Great War is a direct descendant of the necessity on the veldt to have used the naval guns, the 4.7-inch and 20-pounders.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, those were the guns they needed to get the range in order to engage the Boer guns.
Right.
Because their field guns couldn't. So this necessity for this ultra long range kind of weaponry, it permeated everywhere. And that kind of thing we see in rifle development, in artillery development, and it becomes this sort of obsession in the immediate post-Boer War era of the British Army.
I don't know. To me, it seems like by the time you got into the performance ranges that they're looking for cartridges like that, you'd need to have an optics program. Like you would need to have magnified optics and things like that integral to the platform. And it just that wasn't there. Like it's so bizarre to me how much they were pushing sniping cartridges without sniping glass. Pre-World War I, armies had all sorts of little small programs for that. But realistically, I think the most investment I've seen in that so far, and I haven't done a ton of research, is actually like Norway. I think Norway was they were pretty hard on trying to get glass onto their 94s. And they were having really mixed results. They were really struggling because the glass wasn't there, the ruggedness wasn't there in terms of the finely adjustable optics. So it's hard to say. I think, we have great optics available now, but most people are running what? Like NATO? NATO doesn't have anywhere near the same performance envelope as 280 Ross. Mm-hmm. You can get away with a lot, but not, it would still be considered, more of a 303, So I don't know. I don't think you'd ever see it for mass adoption, realistically. No. Outside of very specific conflicts, there's no reason to mass adopt it. Right?
Mm-hmm. It's just, I think that Boer War had such a massive impact on
the psyche.
The psyche, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at, by 1909, the musketry regulations, they've moved from, and in the Victorian era, out to 800 yards would be the standard service shooting. But by the time the Great War comes around and the immediate war, years previous to that, they've reduced it to 600.
Right.
No one shoots farther than 600 anymore. So what is that telling you about the necessity that the Army needs for this?
It also tells you that indirect fire had taken over a lot of stuff too. Like and mortar and artillery and stuff like that. Like it's like once you get out to that range, you go, hold on, wait, why are we doing this with a rifle? Like why aren't we just doing this with equipment? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that too.
The Great War sort of solidifies all of that, right?
Yeah, combined arms.
Oh yeah. And then the next question, it was just literally 3 words: Sten or Lancaster. So
probably Lanchester.
Yeah, it would be Lancaster. Do they say Lancaster?
Yeah, no, they say Lanchester. Sorry, I'm just my throat's a bit dry. Oh shoot, I didn't mean to click down that far. So I'm guessing maybe just preference. So I'm gonna go with that. So y'all both prefer the Lanchester?
I've never shot the Lanchester.
It's we haven't.
Really similar to the
MP18
family. Really similar.
Right. I've held one. I've just never shot it. So
I've worked with both, and I'm gonna tell you, if I had to have one, it's gonna be like the only problem with the MP18, the only one is the Luger mags. Mm-hmm. So the minute you replace that with a proper double stack mag, which was available in the Lanchester, I haven't.
Admittedly, it was that long or something, right?
Yeah, and the problem is there's some more mass in those, as far as I understand it. They're a little heavier.
They are,
but I haven't shot one. I've handled them. I've handled them in museums. I've handled them in parts kits. I haven't been able to shoot one. But just extrapolating, I'd probably pick it. other than just the mass is a pain. But the problem for me with the Stens is they're so, like, they're just welded up whatever, which is perfectly serviceable if you're issuing to an army, but I'm an individual. And as an individual,
You want something to run.
I'm a fat idiot, and if I fell on a Sten the wrong way, I could bend it so that it didn't work. You know what I mean? It doesn't sound like you're probably laughing, but it's like, no, you can take a Sten and whack it against the corner of this table and bind it in such a way that you will not get that bolt to feed right. You were with me when we were trying to get one to run that had some weird, curious stuff to it, and they're just so shoddily put together. Yeah. Whereas I think with the Lanchester, I could get it running with actual normal tools instead of having to weld on it, you know. But again, weight differences and production differences mean that if I'm an army, I'm picking the Sten. The grease gun was superior to the Thompson across the board in terms of weight and producibility and stuff like that. And I think the grease gun Thompson's probably the better comparison, because I probably would pick the grease gun because the Thompson is so freaking heavy and unnecessarily complicated. Whereas technically Lanchester's really not that complicated, it's just heavier, you know. So
yeah, fair. What are your thoughts on the original Remington Model 51 in 380 ACP?
The pistol?
Yeah, the little pistol. Because you can get them in. I know you can get them in 32 with 8 rounds, but the 380 is a 7-round mag.
Have you ever shot one?
No, this is the scene in that Homer Simpson scene where he backs into the hedge.
Oh, you just want to get out?
That's what I'm doing right now because I have no idea.
Rob is an accomplished pistol shooter.
Yeah. Accomplished in certain ways.
I'm so. Actually, can I change my mind about the collab? I think I know what my favorite thing was. This is watching Rob try to handle pistols. My favorite thing actually was you getting mad because you were having trouble scoring hits with. We were doing drills with an Enfield #2 Mark I, and the drills required you to hip fire. Like, do you remember that?
James Bond style?
Yeah. Wasn't that the Enfield #2 Mark I? Yeah. And so, like, you're sitting there, and I was just like, why don't you aim it? He goes, no, the drill is hit. You have to place it like this and just shoot. And I was like, what do you have to get? And he told me the hit count, and I went, the hell? Like, I've never, I'm sitting there going, no, I want to try it. And by the way, I need to go back and try it. I still haven't done that.
Oh, yeah, I want to try it too.
Yeah.
It sounds like fun, but I'm going to be terrible.
Make sure I have a copy of that practice again.
Right? Because honestly, the style of shooting is just like, like the James Bond, where he's walking and he turns and shoots and he goes like this. That's exactly what it's like. It's even in the diagram in the book.
Wait, what was the question? I got completely lost.
Yeah, no. They were asking what were your thoughts on the original Remington Model 51
anyway.
in 380. He specifies in the 380 ACP, by the way.
So Rob is not an accomplished pistol shooter, and he's getting really mad at himself for hip firing and missing. And I'm going, I don't think I could do that. And I didn't want to interrupt the film shoot, but I really wanted to go over there and be like, hold on, I tried it. I really should have, I guess, because it's just, I want to know now.
I mean, fun as hell.
But hard. But so that didn't answer the question.
No, it didn't. I have a limited experience with them.
Do we have? I don't think I have any.
Our buddy Eric has one, and I've shot it, but it's
maybe I have shot it.
It's got the what do they call it? Like the floating breech or whatever. It's got a unique locking system.
Yeah, I remember the slide on those is supposed to be lighter, and that makes the whole over gun lighter in general. No, I remember reading about them back in the day. I think the Unblinking Eye did an article on them, and I read them back in the day.
I found it to be a pleasant 380 that was not as snappy as a blowback, but that's about as far as I've really gotten into them.
Yeah, fair.
I don't have strong opinions other than that. I've seen people starting to weigh in on whether they thought the breech could be adapted to, say, like a 45, and from what little I've read, it doesn't look like it did too well.
Oh, yeah, they did do that.
Yeah, I think it works better with blowback calibers, but I haven't gotten that deep into it to know why physically that is, or if there's maybe something we're missing there.
Mm. Next question. Best Allied marksman sniper rifle of World War I. It gives you a list to pick from. U.S. 1917 Enfield, U.S. 1903 Springfield, Canadian Ross Mark III, British P14, Smelly, or the French Berthier.
Wait, I'm confused. Some of these were not sniper rifles.
Some of those were not sniper rifles at all.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if the 1917 or P14 were fitted for sights until after the war. I can't remember now. I'm trying to struggle. I know one of them only received sights after the war, and I can't remember which one. Or at least the most common pattern for them are actually post-war sights, but everybody thinks they're from the war. Mm-hmm. But the ones that I know were mounted would be like... Actually, did they do the Berthier? I know LaBelle's got the treatment.
Yeah, I know the LaBelle's did.
I assume some of the Berthiers. I haven't even looked into that deeply. The only one I'm really aware of is like the 1903 came in 2 versions. I think it was like the A5 and then the Warner Swayze. This is all your ballpark, right? This is what you're really into.
Oh yeah, 100%. This is all Rob's game. Like
The
right
Ross
here.
got a Warner Swayze on it.
Yeah, I like the Ross personally for.
Is that the one
for
that's
handling.
got like a...
The offset box. We
Yeah,
have one
yeah.
over there somewhere. I'm
I'm
currently
not
trying to
reaching up
rebuild
there
it.
right now. That's a dangerous
I've
place.
got-
There's presents for me up there. I literally can't reach up
Yeah,
there.
I've got a 1903 that I'm trying to rebuild that has like a Warner Swayze rail on it, but I think somebody got it a little crooked. But honestly, don't know. I don't have enough experience. You know what the problem is? It's all going to come down to the optics more than the rifles.
You know
in that
who'd be
case.
good to answer this question? Our buddy over at 9-Hole.
No, I don't know that Henry's handled that many of those optics, though. It's the optic that's the issue. It's not the rifle. If you're taking a sniping roll with an optic, your cyclic rate on the bolt's not going to be the end of the world. The accuracy of the gun is going to matter. Well, the precision of the gun is going to matter. But, you know, in that regard, the Ross out of all
That's
those...
why I said the Ross.
The
was
Ross
gonna be
has
my
the
favorite.
most distinct advantage in terms of how it's set up, embedded, and barreled. But... Is the question just the rifle and I could have any optic I want? Because then probably the Ross, weirdly, or maybe the 1917. Because both of those are sort of the best in terms of precision. But then it depends on what optic I can get.
Yeah, they didn't really specify.
Yeah.
It was very generic.
Well, hopefully I was close enough to an answer.
Okay. Let's do one more question, then we'll take a pause. Okay. What military firearm and or feature of one has the most... I don't know what they were thinking to it. Like, as in, what did you...
Oh, that was the question.
No. What? No,
I thought you stopped in the middle of the question.
No.
Okay, try that again. I'm very confused.
What military firearm and or feature did you look at and think, I don't know what they were thinking with this? I'm wording his differently because I think how I'm wording it is better. Sorry. Not sorry. Like, you literally looked at it and went,
What were they thinking?
why? I mean, I can think of one, but it's an easy one. And everyone, we've talked about it so many times.
What?
The Reichs revolver.
Oh,
safety.
yeah, why single action?
Why
only?
a single action revolver has a massive damn safety on it.
Honestly, the grip is the most confusing thing, too.
That is pretty weird.
There's so many things in the Reichs revolver you're going,
There's so many things you look at the gun and you just go, why? It didn't need to be this.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah. But that was an easy one because we talked about that so many times on this show. But no matter what, whenever I think of that, that style of question, that's what comes to mind.
Of the stuff that I shoot?
Or that you research.
Or that you've even handled with us. I mean,
Are there any confusing features?
or something you just went, why?
He's stuck.
I
You
am.
broke him.
I am.
You literally broke Rob.
Safeties on revolvers
The
are pretty
records.
weird. That's good. You got me locked on that now.
I know. Well, to be fair, it's a really easy one just to kind of think about and just go, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, now I'm looking at my guns trying to figure out other stuff.
I mean, there's also things like, you could think of like the Enfield revolvers and just be like, okay, so wait, there's a different loading system versus unloading system
the selective
on one
extraction
thing.
system's
That
pretty
seems
messed up.
really weird to me that it's, you just look at that and go, that's honestly a strange combination to me.
It's weirdly more in World War II era or interwar era that you get a lot of weird features, especially like light machine guns and stuff where you're going, what in the world? Why did you need to have the machine gun keep the spent casings in a basket?
Yes.
Like, just like the
Was that
Italians,
like-
there's all sorts of weird little features where you're going,
Was there
why?
someone with OCD there just saying, hey guys, we really got to police these brass better? Oh, okay.
No, I can't think of any.
Was that vehicle related?
Oh, I know why. Another one, the Frommer stop. Why did you need to make it a locked breech gun for 32 ACP?
Yeah, no, that doesn't
a
really make
long
any
recoil
sense.
lock breech pistol.
Yeah, for a
32
shot.
ACP.
Yeah, for 32. Doesn't make any sense to me.
And I guess maybe the Ross Steyr too, because it's the same problem. It's an even smaller 32 cartridge
Now,
with
if
a
they
locked
had
breech.
plans to eventually upgrade the ammunition to a higher caliber,
I mean, they made it in 380 as well.
Yeah.
Which starts to make a little sense, but still not worth it.
I mean, if it had been in 45, okay, yeah, it would have been worth it. But
Or 9 or something.
yeah,
but-
9.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just going to say that I'm trying desperately to think of something like that, but I guess the whole issue of safeties on the early Metford Lee Enfields, because they had a safety, then they took it off,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
then they put it back on.
Yeah, but they had it on the cocking piece or whatever too.
That's when it came back. It was on the cocking piece, which I mean, it's a safety. It works.
Yeah, yeah.
But the fact of having that feature when they bring the magazine rifle in, like the Mark I Lee Metford,
Right.
they initially have a safety on it, which is a very conventional spot for a Lee Enfield, like the SMLE has it, the same
Right.
spot, and the number 4.
But then they went, hold on. What if we put it on the cocking piece for no reason?
But immediately they modify it to the Mark I Star and they take it off.
Right.
and there's no safety. And then the Mark II Lee Medford comes in with no safety.
Right.
And then they realize, let's put a safety on this. And they put the safety on the cocking piece and then carry that over into the Lee.
Which is frankly awful, by the way.
It's kind of...
The cocking piece safety, I have one there on the wall that is, it slips because it requires that sear engagement to be just right, because you're not actually blocking the sear, you're just keeping that length separated. So if you play with it, you can get it to jump because that's got a bad sear in it that needs to be fixed. But like, why wouldn't it be a separate lockout like it is on the later guns that would keep that from ever being a problem? So even a bad seer can't throw it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a pause for the cameras real quick.
Okay.
Did you get them?
It's a lot cheaper to make the show this way.
British Commonwealth have a long and rich martial history with many famous and decorated units. What about the opposite of that? Is there a Commonwealth unit/regiment whose uniform you wouldn't wear due to its dishonorable conduct? Ooh.
dishonorable conduct.
Yeah. Like one that even you would find distasteful to wear.
I don't know anything off the top of my head.
I don't either. That's why I'm thinking
like,
these next two, or this one and the next one, are more towards Rob.
There were some units that, had discipline issues and that kind of thing. It doesn't really say that you wouldn't, wear that particular uniform. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyway. It is a national uniform or an empire-wide kind of uniform. Mm-hmm. I really can't think of any specific ones. Performance in battle. There's like a discipline side of things, and then there's, like losing a battle or being forced to run away or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe if it's not a conduct that you personally find dishonorable, less more about them actually being dishonorable technically to their unit.
Yeah.
I don't know of any off the top of my head. Problem.
I
feel like he knows one that we're just not.
Whoever asked the question.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There might be. I just, in terms of the way I approach that, there are different types of units out there and different types of uniforms, rifles and infantry and, Highland and that kind of thing throughout the army. There's none that I would go out of my way to say there's no way I'm touching that, quite frankly.
Right, because you're demonstrating the piece along with the uniform and the drills and practice and things like that. Right. So you're not going to shy away from anything that was possibly historic. I think he might be leaning more towards like something that would be considered historically dishonorable.
Oh, I don't know.
Right.
Like for reenactment groups, you have people dressing up as like World War II Germans.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking. I bet he's probably thinking more along those lines, like maybe that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But what piece of gear for the British was well designed and ahead of its time? Because you put on a lot of different hats there, sir.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Probably the most, at its time, the most
well-designed.
Advanced or well-designed piece of kit would probably be the 1908 pattern web equipment.
Yeah.
He was bragging about it when we were on the range.
Oh, really?
Which admittedly is a little bit on the one end of sort of what I generally focus on. But that's the type of webbing that was used moving into the Great War.
He was all like, this is state of the art.
Which it was, quite frankly.
Nice.
And generally accepted that way. The features it had, the method of manufacture, what it afforded the soldier in terms of comfort, in terms of balance, is sort of unsurpassed at that moment in history. Mm-hmm. When you look at what the other countries brought to the table, France, Germany, Russia.
Whoa. Russia had that blanket roll that they just put over their shoulder.
Yeah, very effective.
Yeah.
Not for carrying ammunition.
No.
You stuff it in the blanket roll.
For immediate access.
You pull it out of the blanket roll.
He really just needs a blanket roll. That's what he wants.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
We can make one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you rank the clips/chargers from worst to best? And he gives you sort of gives you a list to kind of go off of, but he kind of says et cetera with it. He's like, so clips and chargers worst to best, like the Lee Enfield, the Maus or the Mosin or the Schmidt, maybe the Vitali or an M block of some sort. Like, what would you find worst to best kind of thing for your personal experience? Let's go with
personal
that.
experience?
Let's go with, he doesn't say it that way, but I'm thinking we're going to go with personal experience on this one because
That's how it's always going to be.
have to
Muzzleloaders are always
think
the
of it.
fastest.
Well, it's any M block.
Yeah, any
You're
M block
just
is
putting the
they're
whole
always
thing
just rapid.
So does those even really count to what the
It's a
question
clip,
is?
he said.
Yeah, he says M block. He says clips and chargers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's whether it's a Mannlicher or an M1 for that matter.
The Swiss ones are pretty fast.
Oh,
the
yeah.
cardboard ones.
Cardboard chargers?
They're always
yeah.
smooth. They're fast, but the problem is they're also like not the most retainy. I feel like I wouldn't necessarily want to have to hike out several 100 miles with them all up in my gear and falling on them and getting wet and beat up and like.
Yeah.
They're not as rigid, but they're pretty fast for being strippers.
One that stands out to me is with the Vetterli's, that charger. It's not necessarily the fastest one, but
like the slug charger where you like put it in. Have you seen that thing?
Like you can get pretty quick with that.
The Vitali loaders for the Vetterli and I guess the Beaumont as well. They it's like a 4-round slug feed. It's like 4 rounds with a wood block and some metal clips and a rope on it, and you put it in, and then you hold onto the rope and you yank it back out, and the cartridges stay in. That's what you do.
It's pretty wild. Now, the thing is, all of these, by the way, their clip or their charger or whatever, they all have to be in excellent condition because otherwise it's just not
my
going to
problem
go
with that
in.
one is the Vitali. I totally stuck one in for filming, and we went to pull it out, and the rope just tore, and we were like,
Oh.
get the pliers.
So, yeah, that is the problem with that, inevitably. Was there any work done on a carbine variant of the P-14 1917 Enfield during or after World War I?
Not that I know of.
Worked onto the P-17? So,
Yeah, the Enfield rifles, the 14 and 17.
Yeah.
I know of one that was found in a German... it was found in German hands during the war that had been cut down to a carbine. It's in Springfield National Historic Site, so they just found it out there. We don't know who did it or why. And then there's a cut down there's a carbine version of the 1917 that was issued in China because that was World War II era. They had P4 they had 1917s available for the Chinese to use, but they were just way too big. So they cut some of the length of pull off of them, and they cut down the barrels and things and shortened them up a little bit. And you can find those every once in a while. But that was I can't remember the unit. It was very specifically for like a specific Chinese unit.
Okay.
So, but there's only 2 carbine modifications I know for that gun.
Fair. Is the Ross rifle as common in Canada as the 1903 Springfield is here, or are they kind of like French rifles where they all ended up in the U.S.?
I don't think it can be that common though. Because
No, I
you
don't
can make
think
as
it
many.
can be.
They're not as
Nope.
common as the Enfields.
Yeah, no. Nobody made enough of those.
Yeah. But I mean, they are there. You typically wouldn't see them in a gun store anywhere. They would be in the hands of collectors and that collector world. I came by mine personally by the good nature of one of my friends who found it at a gun show.
Ooh.
Oh,
So,
okay.
gave me a shout out and said, "Are you interested?"
But they're usually not sitting on the shelf.
Right.
No.
Okay. Because it's pretty common to find a 03 in a gun shop. It's not that uncommon.
Yeah, you tend to see them here, but that's orders of magnitude more produced.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be like finding a Lee Enfield up there.
So this is kind of a question he's already asked another set of YouTubers. So he asked Bloke and the Chap the following question on their recent Q&A, but apparently they didn't have any definitive answers, so he's trying to ask you guys.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no. What do the butt plates of the Lee Enfield No. 1 Mark III and No. 4 rifles, why do they have a more pronounced side-to-side convex curve compared to their contemporaries?
Trying to picture this now. They have a more
Side to side curve, so curved.
Yeah.
This way.
Yeah.
like why they rolled around.
Yeah. I guess a side-to-side convex curve compared to their contemporaries. A more pronounced one.
Instead of being just a flat curve like this, maybe, on their contemporaries.
He says side-to-side, so I'm assuming left to right.
Yeah. So
why is there more of a convex curve pronounced in that area?
I'm looking at his Mark 1 bind. You're trying to figure out what I'm...
What?
I've seen that before. They're not the only ones to do that. Austrians kind of did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's who I'm thinking of. The Austrian Mannlicher kind of has a rounded butt like that.
I mean, why would the butt plate be rounded in any dimension? For comfort?
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's probably just to get it in the shoulder pocket.
What if there's some sort of gear that they could possibly be trying to...
Would that make the roundness better?
No, I don't think so. I'm just trying to think of anything that might be potentially a cause
I don't know that
for it.
anybody would necessarily record why they did that exact profile other than comfort. But I don't know of anything definitive. I mean, if he's saying it has to be definitive, I don't know if that's been written down. I don't think there's ever been a list of changes notes on the contours of the butt plate.
I don't think that
haven't
actually
heard
is something I've heard you ever talk about in your research, personally.
I mean, it's a little rounder, but I've seen that. I mean, for certain, it's not nearly as bad as it is on like the Italian Vetterli. That has a very steep peak in there.
Oh, yeah.
And then I want to say it was the Austrian Mannlichers. I can't see it from here right now, but the Austrian Mannlichers tend to have it too. Because when you get them in 8x56, it kind of hurts.
Oh, yeah. It does kind of not feel good.
Yeah.
I do remember that. Okay, let's see here. I lost my place. There we go. Do you think the Lamont's smoothbore function, the shotgun, was used much or even regarded as effective?
I have no clue. I know some of them were in use in Civil War, but I don't even know. The problem is getting reports on how often a handgun is discharged at any given moment
Is difficult. I mean,
and
you
then
have
even
to
when
have
they
like
talk
a
about
soldier's account person.
well, even if you have an account of somebody discharging their handgun, they almost never say what handgun it is. So good luck. I don't know that there's going to be much written in that way unless you get lucky that somebody very specifically diaried like, and then I shot him in the face with a shotgun part.
Right, or I shot my horse.
Yeah,
there are accounts of stuff like that.
That gets heard more often because it's people going, okay, seriously, so-and-so shot his horse. We don't want this.
All right, next one. Did the UK or any Empire Commonwealth member countries ever explore converting their Lee Enfield action rifles to a rimless version of the .303 round prior to the Second World War?
I don't know any.
No.
I mean, I'm sure they must have considered it at some point, but I don't know of any. You're asking a lot of the Lee Enfield to convert it to rimless. Because the Lee Enfield relies pretty heavily on that rim to be a gas check.
Yeah, it really does, actually. So I don't...
Because it has no inherent gas checking qualities of its own, like at the Mauser or the Arisaka or any of the other guns.
Yeah.
Nothing that, I mean...
It comes to mind, yeah.
Nothing that comes to mind.
I'm sure they must have considered it as part of other ammo. If they were thinking about...
Quite frankly, though, at that period in time, the last thing that the British Empire was looking to do was incur more cost in terms of its military equipment.
Yeah.
So that was undoubtedly the driving force behind almost every decision in terms of small arms. Was the fact that we have no money. It's 1933, and we have no money to spend on anything right now. Right. The last thing we want to do is retool everything for a new cartridge. Right. We can't even make new rifles right now. They're still
trying to figure that. It's like the Mark V program. They're trying to get trying to figure out how to put a rear aperture sight on the standard rifle.
Which admittedly is nice.
Yeah, but it was way too expensive to fit on, to retroactively fill the Mark IIIs.
But again, down to the money piece.
Yeah.
Being the fact that they've just fought and won a war.
I mean, maybe pre-war when they were considering the P-13, I guess maybe they started considering can they rechamber, but I don't know where that would have gone. I feel like they would have just gone with the new rifle.
And in that case, the rechambering wasn't for a rimless version of a 303.
Right, it
was for a whole cartridge, right?
Yeah. Let's see here. Next question. Was there an actual effort to convert Martini Henrys to 303 for the British Army or colonies, or was it more of a local conversion thing?
From 445 to 303?
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely...
I'm assuming that's what
definitely
it
a pattern of rifle.
I mean, that was a pattern.
It was used to equip colonial forces. The Indian Army used them well into the 20th century.
Okay.
That was one cartridge. They never did a Mark 7, did they?
Of the Martini?
No,
the 7.
The cartridge?
No, but that came in, 1910?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think the 303, because that's the thing is the 303 Martinis, people like to just cram whatever 303 they get into them.
I mean, in terms of safety, 303 is 303.
Yeah.
But in terms of the only thing that would be different would be the sight.
Right.
And I just off the top of my head, I can't think of if they modified Martini Enfields for Mark 7.
I don't know that they would have. That seems pretty late.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. What were the 1953 Enfield paper cartridges lubricated with? It's a very specific question.
At what time?
Oh.
So earlier on, they had a tallow beeswax combination, and if you read Brett Gibbons' book called the English Cartridge, which is specifically an entire volume written on the history of the Enfield paper cartridge.
Wow.
Fantastic book, by the way, and well written, easily readable, and just packed full of all kinds of interesting ammunition information. That generally they started with a combination of beeswax and varying degrees of tallow, and they ended up realizing that in the varying environments across the empire, that mix was good in some places and very poor in others.
Okay.
It was soaking through the paper and corroding bullets. They came into that question and problem in the Crimean and the Indian Mutiny in the early sort of era of the P-53. But their way around it was actually twofold. And they moved straight to they moved to straight beeswax. But that had to be done in a combination with a move of the caliber of the bullet from 5.68 to 5.5. And that extra windage afforded the ability to use pure beeswax, which was universally one acceptable across the empire in terms of environmental issues and whatnot. But
did they have specifically designated bees for this beeswax? Like, was there like a bee farm that they were like, oh no, these are for the cartridges. You don't touch these.
These are the good cartridge bees.
These are the country-owned bees.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, that wasn't his question. I personally just got curious.
Nice bees that are willing to donate their wax.
Yeah.
All right, last question before we
royal bees.
The royal bees, the royal jelly.
But I cannot recommend, if you're interested in that topic, is Brett Gibbons' book, the paper, the English cartridge.
Cool. Well, thank you. All right, last question before we take a break again. Opinion on Sir Charles Ross, an unsung genius, a utterly bonkers man, or just a tinkerer who didn't know when to stop?
I think he's the Canadian Colt.
He is the Canadian Colt. We talked about this before.
Yeah, he took an idea that was already available in the market, transformed it somewhat, and then marketed the crap out of it. And
yelling in the streets.
There's nothing about the Ross rifle.
And had friends in high places.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, there's nothing about the Ross rifle, especially the early ones, that was like... The very first Ross rifles were Bond lickers. There's just Bond lickers. They were frankly stolen, you know? Mm-hmm. And then he's just like, oh, I would change the magazine a little bit. Oh, we'll change this a little bit. And then finally, I guess the Mark III has like the helical grooves instead of whatever. But he just took the Mannlicher and just marketed it to Canada. Mm-hmm. And put more sportsman style stuff on it. And then gave it, I mean, to be frank, the best thing about them was they switched over to the rear aperture sight, but that was in response to where that trend was going already. You know what I mean? Like, he just took trends and poured them onto this gun and tried to really market this domestic manufacturer for Canada, but at a time when they couldn't get Lee Enfield production going there. And so it was brilliant in that regard, but in terms of being like an arms genius, no. Like, just, especially because they missed some really obvious stuff due to the lack of experience.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's take a break for the cameras. Okay, we are 32 questions in, guys. All right, next one.
Whoa, we're 1/3 of the way there.
It's true, technically, yes. All right, the P14 and the P14 and the 1917 rifle 30 are objectively better in most regards than the Smelly and the Springfield 1903. They were politically and logistically headwinds against the U.S. and U.K. adopting them as their mainline rifles, but why didn't they see more success in the export market? The P14 and the 17, specifically.
In the export market?
Yeah.
I think mostly the same reason anything didn't see good work in the post-war era is that there's so much cheap war surplus. I mean...
That's got to be. Like,
I mean, number one. And then number two, all the arms producers were struggling in America afterwards, and America was the only place to produce those things. So, like, you'd have to see like Winchester and Remington marketing them. And they did try to market versions of them. I think Honduras bought some in 1934, but it was a weird hybrid of the 1903 and the 1917. But they also didn't have any patent protection. Like, from the U.S.'s perspective, it's like, you know, the Winchester doesn't own the patent on those. Remington doesn't own the patent on those. They rather sell things that they own the patents on. And again, just a glutted market afterwards, I'm sure, too. Yeah. Like, it's just not the nothing was right for them to be sort of spread. But to be fair, nothing was spread. You don't see a strong export market for the Lee Enfield. Some sold to Iraq, you know, and then the Springfield 1903. You don't see that being sold as a firearm to anybody else, really. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just it was too associated with where it was, and it wasn't geared to be an export firearm.
Sure. Okay. Next question. How many battles during the Victorian era did the Canadians participate in?
I guess we could break that down into sort of domestic and foreign.
Sure.
From the Canadian perspective.
That seems like a good way to do that.
So the first foreign expedition that Canadians were part of, although not in a combatant role, would have been the Gordon Relief Expedition, in which Canadian boatmen were used by Wolseley to crew his boats up the Nile. And medals were awarded and whatnot to those individuals. But strictly speaking, non-combatants. The Boer War was the first time that Canada sent formed bodies of troops, battalions and regiments across to a foreign location to fight. So in Canada, there were a number of what could loosely be called rebellions. There was in the 1830s, predominantly in the the Fenian raids, which happened in the 1860s and into the early 1870s, was perhaps of that particular part of the Victorian era the most significant. The ones that happened in 1866 were a large motivating factor, in addition to all the other ones, in actually the Confederation of Canada, the forming of the nation. So one of many factors, but one nonetheless.
So you're saying the Irish scared Canada into existence?
If you want to frame it that way,
Okay.
for the better. It also caused the issue of the Snyder to be undertaken in Canada, right up there with the first battalions of the British Army. Of course, then we sat on the Snyder for another 30 years.
I was going to say, good luck getting off of it.
Getting off of it, which we didn't. And then there were some other, what have been called rebellions in 1870s and on into the 1880s. The Northwest Rebellion was the last time that an active campaign was fought in Canada on Canadian soil. Again, used the Snyder with a very small smattering of Martinis.
Okay, so a fair bit of battles, but kind of hard to ballpark.
In terms of numbers, exactly.
Well, yeah, because you have different engagements. What do you count as a battle?
Yeah, right. Like,
but
what do you call?
those are the sort of the campaigns.
But the Fenian stuff,
Yeah.
especially, you're just like, was this the battle, or is this a separate battle, or is this just one running?
And then there was other incursions that didn't result in face to face action, but the raid aspect, the occupation of territory and people's houses and whatnot. Yeah.
Fair. All right, next question. Which British colonial imperial troops were consistently the best when called upon throughout all eras and conflicts? Throughout all eras and conflicts.
Yeah,
wow.
who's the most best guy?
Yeah, the most best troop group.
Hey, who's the most best guy?
The ones from Canada.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right. Yeah.
That's a pretty wide arc question, I think. There are groups that the Empire relied on in terms of, let's call them, well, in the Indian Army, Sikh regiments have a very high reputation. There are elements of the British-controlled Egyptian army in the 1880s and into the 1890s that become very effective.
Right.
Some of the Sudanese battalions that assist in the reconquest of the Sudan leading up to the Battle of Omdurman in the late 1890s, they were generally considered to be very reliable, and they were relied on. It's you can't. This when it's a question you can't pick a specific answer for. If it was a video game, it would be the Highlanders.
Right.
Right. But reality is not a video game, of course.
No.
And so there's all kinds of forces that were raised around the empire. That some of them were perhaps what we might call marginal, but there was others that were very good and could be relied on.
Fair enough. All right. We all know that the Second Boer War played a large part in the British development of the Smelly. Did the loss of the First Boer War have any effect on British small arms development?
No, but it did have an effect on the system of musketry. So the First Boer War happened in 1880-81, and it was a defeat for the British. And their first sort of taste of coming face to face with the Boers. Weaponry didn't change. The Martini was in service then, and it was in service for many years up until the...
To be fair, it wasn't their failing either, was it?
Of the rifle?
Yeah.
No, that's not the rifle.
Right.
It was the tactics.
Right.
Yep. And the misuse of tactics. And an under appreciation of their enemy.
Right.
Especially when you see that there was procedures and tactics that were actually in place that don't get used. So it's nuanced. It's not as perhaps straightforward as you might think, but that's the case. So did it affect weaponry the same way as it affected weaponry after the Second World War? No, but targetry changed in terms of training. If musketry becomes much more there's a much more dynamic element that's introduced. A lot of moving and shooting on the ranges, that kind of thing. So the core remains similar, but there's a whole bunch of other things that get lumped onto the training aspect. And that is as a result of the First Boer War.
Wow. A few Canada questions here in a row. How was the Canadian militia armed in the flintlock eras?
In the flintlock areas, they're armed with flintlocks?
In the flintlock era itself, yeah. Oh, well, yeah, really? Oh, my God.
So the Canadian militia is equipped with the brown vest, generally the India pattern.
Right.
So the India pattern,
You didn't get your own pattern?
No, we didn't. There's no Canadian pattern.
Oh, lame.
No. I actually own a brown vest that it was bought by the New Brunswick government.
Really?
As a standalone colony
cool.
for its militia in 1820. So it's a second pattern India brown vest, which viewers of my channel would be familiar with. So there's an example of a type of weapon that was bought by the various colonial entities within what became Canada to arm their militia.
Brad, okay. What arms did the Canadian militia use prior to the Boer Wars?
Going backwards.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, yeah.
From the Boer, they're armed with the Lee, the Mark I Lee Enfield in the Boer War, and moving back from that, the Canadian service rifle is the Snider, and that goes all the way, stretches back to 1867 when it first issued to the Canadian militia. Now, I mentioned earlier that there is a small smattering of Martini use on operations, but in very much a sharpshooting kind of role, issued in very small numbers to what appears to be elements of the 90th, what became the Winnipeg Grenadier, sort of the Winnipeg Rifles,
Okay.
and used during the 1885 rebellion. But generally speaking, the Snider is the service rifle, and it stretches again back to its initial issue in 1867. And then beyond that, we have the P-53, and beyond that, the Canadian militia is only, the modern Canadian Army draws its real core from the Militia Act of 1855, and all its units generally trace their ancestry back to that, at least the ones that are still in existence. So before that, the usual pattern of percussion smoothbores. Again, the British Regular Army is very much the garrisoning element within Canada the farther back you go.
Right.
And they only begin to really downsize in the sort of mid-century time frame, and then they just peter right out by the 1870s. And almost all the British regulars are gone from Canada. So, and then of course, as we just mentioned before that, the usual patterns of India pattern, brown vest.
Yeah, okay, cool. Any service shotguns in Canadian service history?
There are now.
What are they?
I can't remember what it is. It's
Got him!
Do you guys have foraging
Yeah.
shotguns? Do you know about that?
Do we what?
Did you have foraging shotguns?
There may have
Probably, but not.
maybe the Rangers had them.
Well, elements of the American Army would have issued foraging shotguns. As a matter of fact, we had smoothbore trapdoors set up for it. We had early Winchester. What was it? Oh, the Remington 1893 number 3 Ryder shotgun was a really common one to see that would be issued for X number of troops on the western frontier, because it was just well, here, take this. You can kill some game and stock up on food. So it was sort of a frontier thing.
Right. See, our frontier, as it were, would have been sort of manned or garrisoned by the Northwest Mounted Police.
Right.
And later on, the Mounties. So, well, they became the Mounties. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, that is. So, would they have had shotguns?
Yeah, but it's private.
Perhaps,
probably,
perhaps, right? But in terms of a military, issued to the Army, I've never heard of one beyond the modern era where they're used for specific purposes,
Right.
Breaching and that kind of stuff.
Fair. And then weirdly, this was a question that was asked twice. That was the only one that I've noted. Do black powder repros have similarly reduced restrictions in Canada?
We've had this conversation.
As here in
We're
the
talking
States,
about this very thing, yeah.
Yeah.
No, they are considered modern in every sense of the word, depending on their genre that they fit into and their category. So we were having this discussion.
Yeah, we were playing with the black powder Colt.
Black powder, percussion revolver. A real one, it would be considered antique, and a new one, manufactured by an Italian company, perhaps, would be considered as a handgun of any revolver or any other handgun. So, of course, that's all in a bit of limbo right now.
Right. Sorry. How difficult is it getting into surplus historical firearms in Canada?
I don't think it's necessarily difficult. They are certainly more rare than they used to be.
Depends on the era too.
And
True.
it depends on what you still like. I mean, you can still find Snyders and obviously Lee Enfields are very commonly found, but increasingly you find the motorized ones.
Yep.
And have to either undertake a rebuilding process or just have it as is. But your bin of SMLEs fully stocked and ready to go in that sense are becoming very rare indeed, and the prices speak to some of the rarity of these. I mean, $1,000 for an SMLE is not uncommon anymore. That would have been unheard of, unbelievable, even sort of 15 years ago.
And then we'll do this one more question. We'll take a break. He's asking, could you please speak about Fort Henry in Kingston, Ontario? Like what it was, why the firearms of 1867. I don't know if he wants you to do like an episode on it or if he wants you to kind of go into it here necessarily. I didn't understand where he was going with that question.
Right. So the what's called the Fort Henry Guard it's a system that's set up by Parks Canada to staff historical locations with people that will represent military forces of the era. The same sort of general concept is undertaken in Halifax as well, at the Citadel. And essentially what it amounts to is a non-profit organization that is contracted by Parks Canada to provide the service of equipping, training, and presenting these people in that role.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a tiered organization, if you call it the Parks being the management and the labor piece being the nonprofit.
Right.
But in Fort Henry specifically, they represent an amalgam of different units that may or may not, or may have been garrisoned in Kingston at the time. And they've picked an era of the late 60s, and they arm the Fort Henry Guard with Snyders, as the British Army would have been so armed in the late 1860s. And by doing that, they then demonstrate specific evolutions and drills and whatnot, as has been interpreted by them as may have happened in the past. So it's not a specific unit. It is an amalgam, but they generally turn out in what would be a generic sort of infantry uniform of the era. The caps and the jackets and the tunics and the equipment and whatnot. And it's a long-standing tradition, certainly in Kingston. Generally, if you were to generalize, crewed by students, and university students as a summer job. Mm-hmm. And but there's
so they're younger guys.
Generally, yeah.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I've referred to it to a friend in New Zealand actually as state-sponsored reenacting.
Okay.
Which essentially it is. It's employment for these people, and it's part of the historical presentations at these locations.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's take a break for the cameras real quick.
All right, I'm recording.
Look what the Turks left.
Look at that show off.
Oh. Did you know that if you push down on the breech plug, you can let the action go with no stress?
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Next question. I'm going to alter this slightly. Why did it take Britain to change... No.
Try that again.
Yeah. What did it take Britain to change from a semi-rim cartridge 303 to non-rimmed 7.62 NATO, for example?
NATO. It took NATO.
America.
Yeah.
He says, but the tank core use, the Besa machine gun, was their 8mm in their tanks.
Yes, that is correct.
I don't know what question he's exactly asking here.
I don't understand either. The Armored Corps made the decision to go with the
He was
Besa.
asking this at the right time of day. There's another one that was in here where I had to type through it to figure out what he was asking.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So wait, but is the 8mm a misnomer then? I'm so confused.
He's like, what did it take to change? What did it take Britain to change?
I get the first part. What did
the Armored Corps used Mauser, like 9mm or 8mm Mauser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe he's confused because they used 8mm in their tanks.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not what. I'm so confused.
He's literally asking. I guess he was trying to use that as an example, but his core question is, what did it take Britain to change from a semi-rim cartridge, the 303, to a non-rim?
Semi-rimmed. It's rimmed.
It's rimmed. Yeah, it's not semi-rimmed. It is just rimmed.
Does he say rimmed?
He says semi-rimmed.
Oh, okay.
303, and he puts it in parentheses.
Was there a semi-rimmed tank cartridge I don't know about?
No, they used 8mm. It was the same ammunition
But
the Germans
he
used.
puts 303 in parentheses next to it, so he specifically did mean 303. But I don't know why he put semi-rimmed because that's not a semi.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's a full
Well,
eye.
what took him to go to NATO was NATO.
Yeah. America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We made a negotiation, and then we totally backed out of it. Okay, we're gonna do this cartridge. Okay, fine, we'll do this cartridge. No, and then no intermediate because America won't allow intermediate cartridges. Fine. All right, now we're all gonna adopt the FAL. You gonna adopt the FAL, America? No. I want M14. It's like America was just like, no, I'm gonna make everybody adopt magazine Garand.
Yes. But wait like 15 years, and then we'll adopt something brand new.
Yeah.
We're going with magazine Garand, and you're all coming with us.
I don't know what the relationship between the Biza and the... Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, that's the problem. We're
question.
not making the connection. We
Yeah,
must
me
be missing
neither.
some sort of
Okay.
nuance.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry. So next question. Technology differences aside, what were the doctrinal differences, if any, in the U.S. and U.K. infantry training and use of primary battle rifles in World War I? So what were the doctrinal differences in their training methods for infantry use of those?
Jeez, I'm not that deep into the training methods.
I can't really... I mean,
you know the British ones well enough, but I don't know the American ones that well.
In the limited research I've done on the American Army, primarily though in the Victorian era, in terms of what their musketry kind of training is, it does seem to be a little bit more substantial. There's more, like the round count is higher.
Oh, yeah.
But it's generally kind of similar.
No, the only thing I know of difference in terms of like firearm stuff would be just what you said, is that the Americans tend to like really burn range time. Like, for whatever reason, there was an obsession. I mean, we got the Buffington site, for God's sake. Like, that stupid thing stuck around forever because it was all this obsession with the national match. You know, you're going to be able to do target shooting. You're going to have a target. Like, we had that little blade of a front sight, you know. So, I mean, that would be the core difference that I understand, is that the Americans were obsessed with almost like sport shooting. Honestly, the American method of shooting is probably more closely related to the Scandinavians. Where they developed this sort of competition among each other, you know, like Sweden and Norway and stuff like that. And it seems like America got in it. I mean, we ended up with the Krag too, which is actually kind of weird. Maybe that's the tie-in. But perhaps. Americans are just like, no, we want to shoot really far and straight too. But to the point that it became an obsession that didn't necessarily have a military application. Right. So.
All right. My great uncle was part of the Gordon Highlanders in 1915. Highlanders, sorry. I was swallowing spit while I was talking. My bad. What sort of equipment would have been issued at the front?
In 1915? In terms of infantry equipment, I guess. Kind of reading into that. So. It would be the usual pattern, 1908 pattern web equipment. Steel helmets weren't around in 1915. So they would have been wearing, in 1915, they would have been wearing a combination of, depending on what time of the year, either a Balmoral bonnet, which is like a floppy kind of jauntily placed hat, which then morphed into what became known as a tam o' shanter, which was just different construction, but generally
so a beret.
You don't...
A special beret.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of hat that you would have seen used out of the line for the rest of the war. But until sort of 1916 comes around, steel helmets weren't a thing yet. So clothing-wise, the usual 1902 pattern service dress. By 1915, the cutaway front of it would have been less and less seen, and they would have been just wearing the usual infantry pattern with the long square cut skirt. And their kilts, kilt aprons, boots and puttees would have been worn in 1915 versus what would be seen in 1914 with a combination of hose tops and gaiters and shoes. Which were replaced fairly quickly once the war began as being a little bit inappropriate for trench wear.
Sure.
But generally speaking, that form of dress, equipment-wise, was standard throughout the war with those minor changes, as I already mentioned. So.
Okay. Well, cool. When did the English armory system adopt practices that used interchangeable parts like the American Hall rifle?
Interchangeable parts.
Even the Americans didn't truly adopt interchangeable parts of the Hall. It was just sort of marketed that way.
So the first interchangeable parts were made in the 4th pattern Enfield rifle musket.
Okay.
Which is the pattern that, generally speaking, is what you see in the reproductions with the
because they can interchange the parts.
Go figure.
right. During the conflict in Cuba in 1899, America got a taste of the then new 7mm Mauser cartridge, and of course the rifle to go with it. What was it that the 7mm cartridge never gained? No, why was it that the 7mm cartridge never gained the following that heavier rounds did, like the 30-06 and 8mm Mauser, 7.62?
Well, 7mm was extremely popular around the world. It's just that whoever's writing this is probably Anglo or American centric. So
I don't know, not from based off his first name, unless it's just, culture.
Well, no, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, 30-06 became huge in America. And then eventually, because of the export market and surplus availability, ended up in South America to a degree and other places on occasion. But realistically, other than just sort of the surplus aspect, 30-06 wasn't really adopted by anybody else. It was just the American cartridge. Same with 303. Other than the surplus aspect, most places didn't adopt 303. You don't see other countries clamoring to adopt 303. However, 7mm, along with like 7.65, these Mauser cartridges, they were actually adopted by a lot of countries and saw worldwide service because they were an export cartridge to begin with. So when Spain took on 7mm, a lot of other countries decided to take it on. Well, I shouldn't say a lot, but a fair number of other countries took it on more so than you would see with 30-06. It's just that now in this sort of post-everything era, or post sort of gun control era, for most other countries, the U.S. tends to be the hotbed of people still shooting this stuff, and therefore the U.S. cartridges, which were made for guns in the millions, millions of Garens, millions of 1903s. Well, okay, then we're still producing 30-06. Like, there's still so many guns chambering them that
Tons of Mosins,
Right.
a lot of 7.62.
But the 7mm guns, once they sort of fell out of favor and everybody modernized, they all went to their NATO, they all went to their whatever. The 7mm guns weren't made in the millions per country, just overall, but they became this sort of ancillary market thing that were imported in the U.S., and then they're always this sort of, they're a hobby thing. They're not like the thing you're seeking out. And so, therefore, 7mm didn't dominate what is now the market. But, at a time, there was more adoptees of 7mm than there were of 30-06, certainly. Mm-hmm. So...
Was there a pre-World War II? Sorry, I mean to phrase it that way, but I had the space weird. Was there a pre-World War II equivalent of action shooting matches or training in the British Army?
Yeah. In the case of like an IPSC action match or a Cuban action match?
Yeah,
there was
I'm
drill,
assuming
don't get
as
me
well.
wrong.
Yeah, so the soldier's qualification going into World War II, so in the late 30s, when you joined the Army, you did a very formal sort of range work package, which included the usual kinds of applications and groupings and snaps and rapids and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But once you were past a couple of years in the Army, in which you did that every year, you graduated to a phase where all you did was what was known as battle shooting.
Okay.
And that was a scheme on a conventional range that was set up with appearing and disappearing targets at multiple ranges, and a degree of movement as you advanced down the range.
Okay.
So it wasn't a straightforward rundown, firing at this range, running to the next one, firing at the next one, firing at the next one. There was sort of a pause, and then you'd fire 2 or 3 different practices and then move forward again.
Okay.
But the targets were set up in intermediate ranges, not just at the back, at the butts. And they were all actuated by men pulling cables and whatnot, and they'd pop up or they'd turn and shift and that kind of thing. Or if they were in the butts, they would then be lifted and dropped.
Right.
So I think that's probably the best way to equate what action shooting. Again, this is all at service ranges.
Sounds like a fun time.
It does. One day I'll get to it. But it doesn't.
Are you going to make like a disappearing target rig?
I kind of already have.
Have you?
I don't think that whisper got it.
Why are you whispering
It's
it?
okay.
Because it's a secret. I haven't shown it on the channel yet.
Okay, I'm blurring all this out.
You didn't tell me before. We could have done that here.
We could have.
Anyway, next question. Both C&R...
Wait. Are we doing a match? Is that what we're doing?
Do what?
What?
We take you reproduce a battle run, right?
Okay.
With your disappearing targets and stuff, and how to run it.
Yeah.
David's got 700
Blurb
yards,
out this word.
right? You blurb out what word?
I'm assuming the D word that you keep saying.
I'm not allowed to say David.
No, not David. The disappearing word that I just blurped again. I'm assuming I'm blurping that out.
Why?
Because he was trying to be discreet about that.
We're already talking about it. Anyway, so you got...
Okay.
We come up with a disappearing target set, right? Yeah. We do the thing. Like, we get the range set up for it. And then we have a vintage rifle match. And we charge...
Wouldn't that be fun?
We charge enough money to make it worth Rob coming back down. And then everybody hangs out in Charleston.
Yeah.
That's like lovely
A Charleston
scam.
tour by Rob.
Well, I can show you the diagram, and if you think it's viable, I think.
I'm saying, would you pay money and travel
to come and do travel?
Well, no. Would you pay money and travel as a regular? Let's say where you were, right? Let's say 6 hours away, right? And there was an event where they actually set up the range with the disappearing targets and everything, and they scored it like they would back then. And you could show up with any sort of vague period infantry rifle and run this for points. And they took care of tracking the points and stuff. Would you participate in that?
Yes.
Are you biased?
Yes.
Do you get like prestige points for having a proper uniform too?
Well, who's defining the proper? Like
the footage would be awesome.
It would be awesome.
Especially with like a big camera suite set up, sort of semi-permanently.
Like set everything up in such a way that it doesn't detract too much from the event, but it allows people to just go. Like what you do is, if you're smart about it, you sell it as part of the package. You say, hey, when you sign up for this, we hit record on all these cameras, and then that way you're just recorded.
You know, when you go for the helicopter ride to sightsee, and go stand by a helicopter, I'll take your picture. That'll be $450 after you're done if you want the picture.
Yeah.
That's what
you just roll into the package though. You just say, look, it's a $250 ticket, and you got to show up on the day of. But everything's set up for you. There's water, there's snacks, there's whatever available. We've got
a place for pooping.
Well, you got emergency services on standby because it's an event, like you always do. You know what I mean? Like there's a cost of setting up these events, but you come up with a ticket price that includes like, by the way, I would, you're welcome to let your buddy film you. That's fine too, depending on how it's structured.
Oh, you're not into this? Rachel's dad. Bob?
Bob
he'd be into it.
So you do all that, and then you're like, but by the way, we also have these cameras set up so that's catching the match, So.
Okay. Well, next question.
Wait, did we answer that one? I guess we did, yeah.
Yes. We'll do this one and we'll take a break.
We invented a new event.
Yes. Both C&Rsenal and British Muzzleloader videos show examples of institutional momentum hindering progress. However, you decide to define progress. What do you think... However you decide to define progress, essentially. Okay. What do you think is the most extreme for the British system?
Wait, the most extreme what? Is the limit on progress?
The hindering thing, I guess.
What was the most extreme institutional resistance to progress?
Yes, I guess
As
so. For the British system.
Right. What was the most progress lost to stubbornness?
Right.
Right. Is it...
You guys could have had the P-13.
I was going to say that... Well, I was going to say charger loading.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Now, I think there's a little caveat that needs to be put with that, because when does charger loading really become a thing?
Really become a thing?
I mean, are we talking mid-90s?
Oh, no, it was around before that.
Well, sure.
Even the Russians were doing it by 91.
So
if the Russians are figuring it out.
So then that's got to be it then.
What?
Is the lack of, and the...
Yeah, because when was it implemented finally on the Leon Fields? It was like...
With charger loading?
Yeah, wasn't it until like 1900...
The SMLE.
Yeah, 1908, 7?
2?
No.
Right after the war, 3? 1903 is when the list of changes is.
That's nuts. That was really slow.
That's bad.
Right?
That's bad.
To be fair, you were totally about to issue spare magazines.
Oh, that's another piece that perhaps was a... Yeah, but...
The cost on that would have been astronomical.
Does that put them behind anybody else?
What, the cost changing magazines?
Yeah.
No, because the cost on changing magazines is really high.
Sure, it would have been an advantage.
Right.
Unmistakably. But by not having charge, you're behind the...
I don't know how much... I'm going to come out and say I don't think it's that big of an advantage to have a magazine change on a bolt-action rifle compared to a stripper clip. I don't think it's that significant. And then your weight is really climbing.
There's an argument to be made, but in the era of a non-charger loading rifle.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's take a break for the cameras real quick.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we can keep going with this.
No,
I just assumed y'all were good with your topic. Is it fine?
Yeah.
Okay.